Well, Torah portion is Pekudei. That's how it's pronounced. And it means appointments. It can mean some. It can mean number of different things. It's actually quite good because this Torah portion, we're going to talk about words that have a specific meaning depending on the context in which they're used. Not what the Torah portion is going to be about, but we are going to talk about that several times. Go through. In the first part, we're going to look at what it is to keep his commandments. That's one of the words that, depending on the context in which it's used, it can be translated to mean a whole variety of different things. We've looked at what it is to keep, to shema his commandments before, but just changing it for a particular word, which I've changed throughout the Torah portion, really brings home what it's actually trying to say. And the second part, we're going to look at, as opposed to loving Yehovah, what it is to hate Yehovah. Different perspective on that from what we've looked at before. In the third part, we're going to actually get really into the Torah portion in the third part. We're going to look at stuff in depth about the gold, the silver, and the bronze in the tabernacle. Shows us some amazing things actually about the harvests, all the harvests at the end of the time. We're also going to look at demonic kings. And then in the fourth part, and these should be shorter parts, in the fourth part we're going to read through what the actual conclusion of them building the tabernacle was. It's just, this Torah portion's 2.5 chapters, and it pretty much just says, and then they did that, you know, that thing that they were told to do. They did that, and then they did that, and then they did that, and then they did that. And then the tabernacle was built. So it's quite a short Torah portion. So we're going to have the opportunity to look at some things within the Torah portion with a bit greater depth. So it starts in Exodus 31. These were the appointments of the dwelling place of the witness, which was appointed by the command of Moshe for the service of the Levites by the hand of Ithamar, son of Aharon the priest. And Betzalel, son of Uri, son of Cher, of the tribe of Yehudah, made all that Yehovah commanded Moshe. Charlie looked at that last week, that this was the only time pretty much when the children of Israel did all that Yehovah had commanded Moshe, which is good. We'll look at that from a different perspective in a second. And with him, Aholiab, son of Achisamach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver and designer, an embroider in blue and purple and scarlet material, and in fine linen. Okay, so it is good that they did everything that Yehovah commanded Moshe, but it brought something else to mind when I was looking at it. Although it's good that they did it, you've got to look at the circumstances in which they actually did all of the commands. Okay, they were in the camp. They'd been given very, very specific instructions which were quite easy for them to follow. All they had to do is build the stuff just exactly as Yehovah commanded Moshe. And it was like, okay, you're here. Now you've got to build this. You haven't got a choice. You can't go anywhere else and do anything else. You've got to build this thing. So you may as well do it as you're commanded. It made me think about people's attitudes to keeping the commandments, because when it's easy to do, people will do the commandments. The thing is, when it becomes difficult, when a test comes up, the only time when it's actually important, people won't do the commandments. And it's actually worthless to do the commandments when it's easy, because that isn't showing that it's in your heart to do the commandments all of the time. That's just showing that you've got basic human nature. It's easy to do the commandments if you have that fear of Yehovah and you realize, I better do this because otherwise maybe things won't go well in my life for me. So it's easy to do it when you fear him and you're like, oh no, I can't disobey the commandments because then my life might go rubbish. It's not really what Yehovah is looking for. It's not really loving Yehovah, is it, to do it for that reason. It's easy to do the commandments when it makes sense to do them. When you can look at things and say, okay, so scientifically, it's actually unhealthy for me to eat unclean food. So it's for my health. You know, it makes sense. And I'll do the commandments. Worthless. Okay? It's easy to do it if you try to curry favor with Yehovah, if you've got something going on in your life and you're like, I want this to go well. Therefore, I'll do the commandments, because if I didn't do the commandments, I'd be worried about this all falling to pieces. It's worthless, though, because you're not doing it out of love for Yehovah. It's easy to do it as well when you're in a group of people like they were, and there's people all around, and they're all doing the commandments. So you're thinking, well, I should do the commandments. You know, we'll all go to the feast together, and we'll do the feast because everyone's going to the feast. So I may as well go to the feast, and we'll do it for that reason. Peer pressure, basically. That's not really what Yehovah is looking for either. So in this position, it was quite easy for them to do the commandments. And what you know? They did the commandments. But whether it was actually in their hearts to follow the commandments, we know that it wasn't, because every time a test came up, they just failed. We have a look at this concept. We see in Galatians 6:15, for in Messiah Yeshua, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any strength, but a new creature. So if you do the commandment, you get circumcised, doesn't matter. Okay? It's actually the reasoning behind it, which Scripture reveals is the important thing. I've given the example before of if you had an apprentice, you had two apprentices. One of them did everything perfectly all the time, just because they kind of worked out in their head that it was good to do these things, just completely independent of you. They're not doing it because you've said to do it. They're doing everything and it's right. It's just how you would have them do it. Then you've got another apprentice who just has messed up loads of times. But every time you've instructed them, they've had complete faith in what you're saying, and they've put it right, and they've done it differently. Which apprentice is of more use to you? The one who follows all of the things because you've said it and they trust what you've said, or the one that was just doing it well anyway, but doesn't have any kind of faith in you, doesn't do it for the right reasons? It's worthless to you to have that apprentice because you just don't know what they're going to do. You know that they're doing it well so far, but you don't know what they do if you say, okay, do this. You need to have faith in me, do this. So the only thing which is actually useful to the Lord is that we are a new creature. The state of whether we're circumcised or not doesn't matter. And again, it applies to all of the commandments. Wearing tzitzit, doesn't matter if you wear tzitzit or you don't wear tzitzit. All that matters is you're doing it because you're a new creature. And we see Paul repeat this throughout several things, several verses. 1 Corinthians 7:19, circumcision is naught and uncircumcision is naught, but the guarding of the commandments of Elohim does matter. Are you doing it to guard the commandments of Elohim? Is that the motivation behind it, or is there another motivation? You know, maybe you were circumcised already. Does the Lord look down and say, oh, they're already circumcised? That's brilliant. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Of course not. Galatians 5 verse 6 says, for in Messiah Yeshua neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any strength, but faith working through love. This is what we're going to look at in this part. The idea of faith working through love. Now, to understand this, a little bit of background information that we need to understand what I'm going to go through. There's two words in Hebrew that are very, very similar to each other. Okay? There's Shema, which is translated as hear. It's also translated as obey, depending on the context. We'll look at a context where it should just be translated as hear later on, but depending on what's being said, you can understand this word differently. So Shema is made up like this, very similar to the other word we're going to look at. It's got this letter here, which is a sheen. Okay? Very similar to this word here, which is Shema. It's got the sheen and the mem, different final letters. So the first part of Shema, this letter here, this Hebrew letter is a sheen. Okay? Sometimes a seen as well, so it makes either an S or a sh sound. If the dot is here on the right-hand side of it. It makes a sh sound. This vowel here is called the shava vowel, very similar to the word shema. And all it's saying basically is that you go from the first consonant to the second consonant with just the briefest of a pause. So shema, like the vowel shava. Next part of it is the mem. Okay, it's got a vowel underneath it called a patak vowel, which makes an a sound, patak. So you've got sh, ma. And then this letter on the end, you add it on. This is an ayin, okay, and it's kind of like an A. The sound that it actually makes is probably closer to a sound, not a natural sound for us to make, okay. Yeshua's name actually ends in an ayin. So technically his name is Yeshua. That's kind of, it's lost in the subtlety of pronunciation. When I pronounce things like this and the het, you'll notice that I'm deliberately saying it because it's not a natural sound for us to make. But that's the sound that it makes anyway. So really it's shema, okay? The other word is sha-ma. So we've got the same first letter with a different vowel underneath it. This is called the chametz vowel. It makes an a sound. So sha. It's got the same mem with the patak under. So it's an ma. And then the final letter, the resh, makes it ma. Okay, so you've got sh-ma. Okay, sh-ma, sha-ma. Okay, and they mean different things, but they're actually quite closely related to each other. So this is what Shema means. This is the Strong's definition, so if it's a bit small. Okay, to hear, listen to, obey. It depends on the context that it's used in. The word Shema, it says in Strong's, means to keep, guard, observe, or give heed. Okay. What you need to bear in mind when you read in the Strong's, this list here isn't a list of definitions of the word, okay? This list here is an outline of biblical usage, so how it's used in whatever particular translation the Strong's is coded into. So it doesn't mean this is an exhaustive list of everything that this word can mean. It just means that in that translation, that's how it's translated. Okay, so there is a meaning for Shema which is dependent on context. It does mean to keep guard, observe, give heed, to protect something, but you can appreciate that if you use a word like that in a certain context, and the context that we're going to look at is in the context of loving Yehovah, then it takes on a different meaning. And the meaning that I'm going to suggest for this word is cherish, okay? That's what it means, to keep and guard it. But when it's related to loving Yehovah, loving his commandments, loving his Torah, then the word means to cherish something, okay? Psalm 119, 162 to 168 gives us a good way that we can see this in context, and we can see how this word is used in context. It says, I rejoice at your word as one who finds a great treasure. So we could actually translate it as to treasure something, treasure or cherish it. I have hated falsehood and loathe it. Your Torah I have loved. I have praised you 7 times a day because of your righteous judgments. Great peace have those loving your Torah, and for them there is no stumbling block. Yehovah, I have waited for your deliverance, your Yeshua, and I have done your commands. My soul has cherished your witnesses. Not kind of my soul has kept or guarded your witnesses. In this context, we can see how this word should be translated. My soul has cherished your witnesses, and I love them exceedingly. I have cherished your rules and your witnesses, for all my ways are before you. That makes sense. Gonna move. Exodus 25-6 says, "You do not bow down to them, nor serve them, for I, Yehovah, your Elohim, am a jealous Eol, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me." Well, notice in this passage, there's only two types of people that are mentioned in the entire world. There's those that love Yehovah, and there's those that hate him. But showing mercy to thousands, to those who love me and cherish my commands. Because loving him, as Charlie looked at last week, loving him is to love his word. He mentioned when Yeshua says, "If you love me, you shall keep my commandments." He's not saying, as a result of you loving me, please keep my commandments. He's saying, if you do love me, you shall keep my commandments, because my commandments are me. Okay, you cherish my commands. Deuteronomy 7:9-10 says, "And you shall know that Yehovah your Elohim, he is Elohim, the trustworthy Eol, God in covenant and mercy for 1,000 generations with those who love him and those who cherish his commands. But repaying those who hate him to their face, to destroy them. He does not delay to do so with him who hates him. He repays him to his face." Oh, we'll realize what hating him is. Obviously, we can appreciate it on a almost superficial level, that to hate him is to not do his commandments. See, to those of us who are here who believe his word, this would be a terrifying thing. But it's quite amazing to me that those who actually hate him, the fools, don't appreciate what this is saying here. Saying, look, I'm going to repay you to your face. I'm going to destroy you. Again, when people are face to face with him, when they are being judged by him, that is obviously the outcome. But notice again, there's two types of people that are mentioned. Those that love him and those that hate him. And when we look through this, we're going to look at what it is to love biblically and what it is to hate biblically, because it's quite interesting. I've left these partitions in. They were originally in just to help me organize it as I was going through, organize the verses. But I think that it's useful to kind of keep people where we're at. Okay, so being commanded to love, that's quite a strange concept, isn't it? Joshua 22, verse 5 says, "Only greatly cherish to do the command in the Torah, which Moshe, the servant of Yehovah, commanded you, to love Yehovah your Elohim, to walk in all his ways, and to cherish his commands, and to cling to him." The word cling there is the same word that when it says that a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. Okay, it's cleave to him, cling to him in the same way, and to serve him with all your heart and all your soul. I don't know if it's ever seemed like a weird thing to be commanded to do before. Love Yehovah with all your heart and all your soul. Okay, I'm not sure that I'm quite there, but I'm commanded to do it. It's quite weird. Psalm 97, verse 10. "You who love Yehovah hate evil." Okay, I hate evil. I'll definitely do that from now on. "He guards the lives of his kind ones. He delivers them out of the hand of the wrong." Hate evil and love good, and set up judgment in the gate. It might be that Yehovah Elohim of hosts shows favor to the remnant of Yosef. "And now, Yisrael, what is Yehovah your Elohim asking of you, but to fear Yehovah your Elohim, walk in his ways, to love him, to serve Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart and all your soul, to cherish the commands of Yehovah and his laws which I command you today for your good." What else does he require? He just wants you to do this. But I don't know, if you don't do that, then where do you stand with Yehovah? If you don't love Yehovah, you just received the command to love him, what are you supposed to do with that? Micah 6:8 says, "He has declared to you, O man, what is good. And what does Yehovah require of you but to do right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your Elohim," which is actually the same thing as keeping his commands and cherishing him, because we're told that this is the outpouring of that anyway. Matthew 22:34-37. "The Pharisees, having heard that he'd silenced the Sadducees, were gathered together. And one of them, one learned in the Torah, did question, trying him and saying, 'Teacher, what is the great command in the Torah?' And Yeshua said to him, 'You shall love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul, and with all your mind. And you bear in mind that this guy who he's speaking to isn't in this position. So what's the answer? How do we love Yahovah? Tells us how to achieve it. Deuteronomy 6:4-9 says, "Hear, O Yisrael, Yahovah your Elohim, Yahovah is one." And this is the key to the whole thing. The word here is Shema. Okay? And in context, again, it can mean different things. It can mean literally to just hear something. People are described in the Bible as having heard something that they do not end up obeying. It can also mean to trust and obey. It can also mean to really absorb something into yourself and to kind of make that a reality, to truly Shema, to do it. And this is the key. It says, "Shema, O Yisrael, Yahovah your Elohim, Yahovah is one. And you shall love Yahovah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might." Okay, there you go. If you Shema Yahovah, then you shall love Yahovah. Because these things don't come about just naturally. Charlie was looking at this last week, the idea that faith comes by hearing, faith comes by Shemaing. Okay, we saw the commandment before that said circumcision's nothing, uncircumcision's nothing, but faith, which comes from Shemaing, working through love, which also comes from Shemaing. See, the thing is, people won't come to the point where they will Shema the word of Elohim. And to Shema, to obey, to absorb it, to do it, to listen to it, and to really make it a part of you. People won't do that at all. They will say, "I obey Yahovah," but do they obey Yahovah? If there's anything in which they're not just, as a response, they hear something and then they do it, which is what it is to Shema it. If there's anything, then they're actually disobedient. Because, say you were someone's boss again, and you told them to do a load of stuff, and they did all of the stuff apart from this one thing which they just kept on refusing to do. Would you describe them as obedient or disobedient? It's obvious, isn't it? They're disobedient. They would not Shema your voice. Okay, so to Shema is to truly just submit in everything. And when something comes and you're told, no matter how kind of difficult it is for you, you just put it into action, you do it. That is what a Shema response is. You Shema, and you shall love Yahovah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your might. And these words which I'm commanding you today shall be in your heart. It's amazing, isn't it? Okay, you Shema the words, you just start to actually do the words, and you don't have to have loved Yahovah previously, but if you do them, then you will come to faith and you will love Yahovah. Because Charlie gave the example last week, didn't he, of the shower, taking the shower. He couldn't have appreciated what it was like until he actually took the shower. And that's exactly how it works. Until you Shema Yahovah, you will not love him. The commandments will not be in your heart. And you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. This just kind of becomes who you are. Okay? It envelops you. It just becomes how you operate. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. Because you're either going to have that there, or you're going to have the mark of the beast there. You're going to do the things that come from that. Okay, we've looked at it before as well. It's not saying tie a box on your hand, tie it on your forehead, just what you think and what you do. Similarly, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. It's not talking about getting a mezuzah or getting your chisel out and cutting them on the doors. We do have a mezuzah on the door, and there's no harm in doing that, but that's not really what it's saying. It's just saying that's how you will govern your household. But this is the first step. So if you're thinking, maybe I don't love Yahovah, maybe I'm just not there, this is where you need to start. Romans 10:17, Charlie looked at it last week. So then belief or faith comes by Shemaing, and shemaing by the word of Elohim. You get the word of Elohim, okay, got that, shema the word of Elohim. Now I've got faith in it, because just doing it shows me that it is correct. It's called something that is axiomatic, something that is self-proving. Deuteronomy 30:15-18 says, "See, I have set before you today life and good and death and evil. In that I am commanding you today to love Yehovah your Elohim, to walk in his ways and to cherish his commands and his laws and his judgments. And you shall live and increase, and Yehovah your Elohim shall bless you in the land which you go to possess. But if your heart turns away and you do not shema, and shall be drawn away and shall bow down to other gods and serve them, I have declared to you today that you shall certainly perish. You shall not prolong your days in the land." So, how do we love Yehovah? We shema him. What happens if we don't? We do not shema. This word is shema. If you do not shema, your heart will turn away from him. It's just that simple. You can't really understand the word of God academically and then be convinced of it. I mean, you can, but you won't end up loving Yehovah. You won't end up walking it out through faith. Only if you shema and you've got that response to it will you end up in that position. Deuteronomy 7:11-12 says, "And you shall cherish the commands and the laws and the judgments which I command you today to do them." Okay, so this word here is shema, to keep. People get these things confused, don't they? They think keeping the commands is doing the commands. Yeah, I do keep the commands. I do the commands. Not what it's saying. There's a different word for do. Okay, we've looked at it before. It's asa. So shema really has a different connotation. It's to cherish. "And it shall be, because you shema these judgments and shall cherish and do them, that Yehovah your Elohim shall guard with you the covenant and the kindness which he swore to your fathers." So you see it again. Okay, because you've shemad the judgments, you shall cherish them and do them. Deuteronomy 30:1-10 says, "And it shall be when all these words come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, and you shall bring them back to your heart among all the Gentiles where Yehovah your Elohim drives you," and we know how that's done now, "and shall turn back to Yehovah your Elohim and shema his voice, according to all that I command you today, with all your heart and all your soul, you and your children." How are you going to do it with all your heart and all your soul? Just starts with that very simple thing that virtually no one does, and it's to just trust and obey the commandments. You do that, you're going to end up having faith, and you're going to end up loving Yehovah. "Then Yehovah your Elohim shall turn back your captivity and shall have compassion on you, and he shall turn back and gather you from all the peoples where Yehovah your Elohim has scattered you." See, we've got this big Torah movement, haven't we? The people coming back and they're doing the Torah. Problem is, they're not shemaing the Torah. When people begin to shema the Torah, then he's going to gather us from all the peoples. And, maybe this will happen soon. Maybe this is just people getting to that point. But right now, they don't. They do the commandments, or they do some of the commandments. The reason that they don't do all of the commandments is because they don't love Yehovah. They don't have true faith in him. And that is because they haven't started at that very simple starting point of shemaing his word. "If any of you are driven out to the farthest parts under the heavens, from there Yehovah your Elohim does gather you, and from there he does take you. And Yehovah your Elohim shall bring you to the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it, and he shall do good to you and increase you more than your fathers. And Yehovah your Elohim shall circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed to love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, so that you might live." So we've looked before that the play out of time has achieved this. Okay, ultimately the play out of time has achieved this. It's put them in this position. But what actually specifically does it in the circumstance is they begin to shema his word. And through them shemaing his word, their hearts become circumcised, and they begin to re'eh, they begin to see, they begin to understand who he is, and they begin then to have faith and to love Yehovah with all their hearts and all their souls. Yehovah your Elohim shall put all these curses on your enemies and on those who hate you, who persecuted you. And you shall turn back and shema the voice of Yehovah and do all his commands which I command you today. And Yehovah your Elohim shall make you have excess in all the work of your hand, in the fruit of your body and in the fruit of your livestock, and in the fruit of your ground for good. For Yehovah turns back to rejoice over you for good, as he once rejoiced over your fathers, the patriarchs. If you shema the voice of Yehovah your Elohim, to cherish his commands and his laws which are written in this book of the Torah, if you turn back to Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart and all your soul. He's just waiting on this. If you shema the voice of Yehovah, it's so simple. It's just that thing that nobody does. Like, I do all of the commandments. That's keeping the commandments. I do love Yehovah. You love him with all your heart and all your soul. I don't know. That might be a bit difficult. I'm not sure that I could do that. Shema his word, and then that will be the outcome. Joshua 23, 6-11 says, and you shall be very strong to cherish to do all that is written in the book of the Torah of Moshe, so as not to turn aside from it to the right or to the left, so as not to go in among these nations, those who remain among you, and make no mention of the names of their gods, nor swear by them, nor serve them, nor bow down to them. Okay, and we've seen before, we live in a modern society, the idea of gods in our society, people think that looking to a deity as a god is a bit, a bit outdated, a bit old-fashioned. So they've fashioned themselves other gods, other things that they lift up and idolize above Yehovah. And people find it so difficult living in society, okay, not to turn aside to the right or to the left, and to not go after these other gods and to cherish those gods. But cling to Yehovah your Elohim as you have done to this day. For Yehovah has driven out from before you great and strong nations. As for you, no one has stood against you to this day. One man of you shall put 1,000 to flight. For Yehovah your Elohim is he who is fighting for you, as he has promised. And you shall diligently guard yourselves to love Yehovah your Elohim. Okay? We look at the scriptures sometimes and we can think, why aren't these things happening? Why aren't these amazing works of God happening? And it's simply because his people will not shema. It's the key ingredient. And when they realize that and they begin to shema, then all of these things will fall in place for them. So again, Galatians 5, verse 6. For in Messiah Yeshua neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any strength, but faith, which comes from shemaing, working through love, which comes from shemaing. So it's saying essentially, circumcision doesn't matter, uncircumcision doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is whether you shema the word of Elohim. Proverbs 4:4-6 says, then he taught me and said to me, let your heart hold fast my words, cherish my commands and live. Get wisdom, get understanding, do not forget, and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not leave her and let her guard you. Different word here for guard. It's a natsar, okay, but it also means to keep and to guard, but it's used in a different context throughout Scripture. Love her and let her watch over you, okay? It's amazing. We looked the other week. Let wisdom watch over you. You think, I'd love it if all of the things in my life just went really well. It would be brilliant. Like, let that happen. Shema his word. Have that response, and then that's going to happen. Just all the way through his word. Don't turn away from the words of my mouth. Let your heart hold fast to my words. Cherish my commands and live. People don't cherish his commands. People might do his commands. They might get together in a big religious group and do them for all the wrong reasons, but they won't cherish them, just simply because they will not absorb it totally into themselves and just do that as a response. That's what the word says, I'll do it. That's what the word says, I'll do it. And you'll notice the people who are strongest in faith have that. They do that. That's why they end up loving Yehovah. You can look at people and go, why do these people love Yehovah and these people don't? It's very simple. Those people shema Yehovah, other people don't. So the love of the truth, Charlie looked at this last week as well. 2 Thessalonians 2, 9-11 says, the coming of the lawless one is according to the work of Satan with all power and signs and wonders of falsehood. Okay, scriptures talk a lot about falsehood, which we'll see. And with all deceit of unrighteousness in those perishing, because they did not receive the love of the truth in order for them to be saved. And for this reason, Elohim sends them a working of delusion for them to believe the falsehood. Okay, is this just a new thing in Scripture? Or is this existed anywhere else? Psalm 119, 118 says, you have made light of all those who stray from your laws. All those who stray from your laws, notice, they were keeping his laws, but they've strayed from them. Okay? All those who stray from your laws, for falsehood is their deceit. Okay? You can see that in this. The wonders of falsehood, the deceit of unrighteousness, for them to believe the falsehood. What's the falsehood? Those who stray from your laws. It couldn't be any clearer. Jonah 2 verse 8, I love this translation of it. Those observing false worthlessnesses forsake their own mercy. It's great. I like the translation as well, which calls them lying vapors or false vapors. These are the things that people choose. You've got Yehovah, who's the foundation of everything, from whom everything comes, the only thing of any substance. And the thing that people choose to love instead is just nothingness. Nothingness that he's just conjured up in order to test them. And they'll go after that. They'll love that. It's bizarre. 2 Thessalonians 3, 1-6 says, for the rest, brothers, pray for us so the word of Yehovah spreads rapidly and be praised, as also with you. And that we might be delivered from unreasonable and wicked men, for not all have belief. For the master is trustworthy, who shall establish you and guard you from the wicked one. And we trust in the master as to you, both that you do and shall do what we command you. And the master direct your hearts into the love of Elohim and into the endurance of Messiah, which is an interesting statement to me. Okay, so we're commanded to love Yehovah. We think, how do we love Yehovah? The Lord directs our hearts into the love of Elohim. Again, and we've seen the process by which this comes about. It's by shemaing his word. But we command you, brothers, in the name of our Master Yeshua Messiah, that you withdraw from every brother who walks disorderly and not according to the teaching which you received from us. Very timely. Psalm 119, 119 says, you have made to cease all the wrong of the earth like dross. Therefore, I have loved your witnesses. And we'll draw to a close on this part. But I just want to have a look at some of the things that are written by David, who has the love of the truth, because they're amazing. Psalm 119 says, it is time for Yehovah to act, for they have broken your Torah. Therefore, I have loved your commands more than gold, even fine gold. David doesn't care about false worthlessnesses. He doesn't care about lying vapors. He loves the commands. Why? Because he shemas. Verse 159 says, see how I loved your rules, Yehovah. Revive me according to your kindness. Oh, how I love your Torah. It is my study all day long. Your commands make me wiser than my enemies, for it is ever before me. I have more understanding than all my teachers, for your witnesses are my study. I understand more than the aged, for I have observed your rules. I have restrained my feet from every evil way, that I might cherish your word. I have not turned aside from your judgments, for you yourself have taught me. How sweet to my taste has your word been, more than honey to my mouth. From your rules I get understanding, therefore I have hated every false way. How different is that than people who will come to the word and they'll debate over every little point. Do we need to keep that? Oh, I'm not sure, I'll need to go away and have a think about whether or not I need to keep that. Maybe consult some nonsense that says that I don't have to keep it. Maybe that's what I should do. How different is that to a Shema response? A Shema response would say, Okay, the word says that, I'm going to do it. If I find out at some point that I didn't have to do that, then that's fine. You know, I'm in a much better position. I would rather shema the word and do it as a result than try to find some kind of way out of the word. And we'll look a little bit more at the mindset that goes behind that in the second part. I rejoice at your word as one who finds great treasure. I have hated falsehood and loathe it. Okay, what do they have, the ones who do not have the love of the truth? The wonders of falsehood, the deceit of unrighteousness. Okay, different response. I have hated falsehood and loathe it. Your Torah I have loved. I have praised you 7 times a day because of your righteous judgments. Great peace have those loving your Torah, and for them there is no stumbling block. Yehovah, I have waited for your deliverance, and I have done your commands. My soul has cherished your witnesses, and I love them exceedingly. Great peace of those loving your Torah. For them there is no stumbling block. This is something else that you will see in people who shema the word. They've got complete shalom. There is no stumbling block to them because it doesn't become a point of, should I do it? Should I not do it? Maybe I won't do it. Maybe it's okay to do it. Maybe I'll do it this once and then won't do it again. No, there's none of that. They just shema the word. Oh, the word says it, I'll do it. Change myself. Brought myself in line with it. They have great peace and they have great shalom. They're the people that you'll see who walk strong in faith with a strong love for Yehovah. Proverbs 4:4-12 says, then he taught me and said to me, let your heart hold fast my words, cherish my commands and live. Get wisdom, get understanding. Do not forget. Do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not leave her and let her guard you. Love her and let her watch over you. The beginning of wisdom is get wisdom. And with all you're getting, get understanding. Exalt her and let her lift you up. She brings you esteem when you embrace her, when you shema. She gives your head a fair wreath. She shields you with an adorning crown. My son, hear my son and accept my words and let the years of your life be many. I have taught you in the way of wisdom. I have led you in straight paths. When you walk, your steps shall not be hindered. And if you run, you shall not stumble. Does not wisdom call and understanding lift up her voice? On the top of the heights along the way, between the paths she has taken her stand. Beside the gates leading to the city, at the entrances she shouts, O men, I call to you, and my voice is to the sons of men. Wisdom calls, okay? Do men hear the voice? I'm sure that they all hear the voice, but do they shema the voice? You simple ones, understand insight, and you fools, be of an understanding heart. Listen, shema, for I speak noble words, and the opening of my lips is about straightness. For my mouth speaks truth, and wrongness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness, none of them twisted or crooked. All of them plain to him who understands and straight to those who find knowledge. I'm sure you've remarked before at how amazing it is that some people just don't understand it when it's so clear. It's so clear, it's so obvious, it's just crystal clear, and it's so easy. Accept my discipline and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the lights are not comparable with her. All the lights are not comparable with her. Again, it's just something the fools can't understand. They'll go after the things that please them. They'll go after the things that please their flesh. They'll go after something else that they think they're going to be able to derive delight from. But it's just not there. It's just a lying vapor that comes up. They go after it because they think, I know better than Yehovah. They might not consciously think that in their head, but that's the implication of what they're saying. I, wisdom, have dwelt with insight, and I find knowledge, foresight. The fear of Yehovah is to hate evil. I have hated pride and arrogance and the evil way and the perverse mouth. Counsel is mine and sound wisdom. I am understanding. Strength is mine. Okay, the spirits of the Lord, the spirit of counsel, spirit of wisdom, spirit of understanding, spirit of strength. By me kings reign and rulers make righteous decrees. By me princes rule and nobles, all the judges of the earth. I love those who love me, and those who earnestly seek me do find me. Okay, this is what Yehovah possessed. Okay, he loves those who loves him. The rest he hates. He hates those who hate him. Riches and esteem are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold and fine gold, and my increase than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness, in the midst of the paths of judgment, to bestow substance on those who love me and to fill their treasuries. And we've looked at what it is, how we end up in this position. How do we end up loving wisdom? Romans 8:28-29 tells us, we know that all matters work together for good to those who love Elohim. How do you love Elohim? Shema Elohim. To those who are called according to his purpose. Because those whom he knew beforehand, he also ordained beforehand to be conformed to the likeness of his son, for him to be the firstborn among many brothers. And we've seen the connection. Those who love Elohim are the ones who Shemad Elohim. When they Shema Elohim, they end up conformed to the likeness of his son, because you can't end up anywhere else if you Shema the words of Yehovah. Because if Yeshua did anything, he certainly Shemad and Shemad the words of Yehovah. I put this verse in because I thought Charlie's going to love this verse. I have hated half-hearted thoughts, but I have loved your Torah. I just thought that was amazing when I read it. We'll take a break and come back and look at some other aspects. Okay, so in the next part, we're going to look at kind of related things. We've looked at love. We'll look at now hate. What it is to hate Yehovah. So it's not necessarily what we imagine. We know that it's not keeping his commands, perhaps, but worth looking at. Okay, so this verse should be familiar to us. The soul who does whatever defiantly, whether he is a native or a stranger, he reviles Yehovah, and that soul shall be cut off from among his people. Because he has despised the word of Yehovah and has broken his command, that soul shall certainly be cut off. His iniquity is upon him. So there's some things within this that we need to understand to really understand the depth of what this is saying. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to look at is this. What it is to revile Yehovah. We can kind of understand in the English what it is to revile someone, but there's a little bit more going on there. Okay, so this is the word revile in the Hebrew. It's a gedaf. And when it's used of men, you would say that you revile somebody. But when it's used of God, of Yah, really what it's closer to is to blaspheme him. Okay, it's not necessarily to revile him like you'd revile another man. Ezekiel 20:23-27 says, also I lifted my hand in an oath to those in the wilderness to scatter them among the Gentiles and disperse them throughout the lands. Okay, he said that he was going to do this. In Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, the curses, tells them that he's going to do this. It's interesting that from his perspective, when he told them that he was going to do this in his word, he swore an oath to them that he was going to do this. Because they had not done my judgments, and they rejected my laws and profaned my Sabbaths, and their eyes were on their father's idols. So it's exactly the same for people who do these same things now. Doesn't matter why they're profaning the Sabbath. If they think, I need to do this just so that I've got money to live, I need to work on this Sabbath, or whatever the nonsense excuse is for not shmaring the word, he's sworn an oath to these people as well that he will treat them in a certain way. And I also gave them up to laws that were not good and judgments by which they would not live. So when he sent them out to live among the Gentiles, he gave them up to the laws, the legal systems of the nations in which they were scattered. Laws that were not good, judgments by which they would not live. And he doesn't mean they won't do the judgments. What he means is, if you do the Torah, you will live. It will be life to you. By these laws, though, they don't bring life. And we can appreciate that, the legal system that we live under at the moment. And I defiled them by their own gifts as they passed all their firstborn through the fire, so that I might appall them, so that they know that I am Yehovah. Therefore, Son of Man, speak to the house of Israel, and you shall say to them, thus said the Master Yehovah, in this your fathers have further reviled me, blasphemed me by committing trespass against me. Isaiah 37:23, whom have you reproached and reviled, reproached and blasphemed, because it's talking of Yah. And against whom have you raised your voice and lifted up your eyes in pride? Against the set apart one of Israel. And this is one of the things that they just don't get. They don't get these things. They don't believe the word. If you thought that you were in the position where Yehovah has sworn an oath to deal with you in the same way, and he was saying to you, who do you think you're approaching and blaspheming here? Who have you lifted up your voice and your eyes in pride to? Well, he says the same thing to all of these people who live in this way. Okay, so we understand what it is to revile Yehovah. Okay, and we understand how you revile Yehovah. Now let's look at what it is to despise the word of Yehovah. Because we kind of understand what it is to despise, don't we? We can understand the word despise. But it's another one of these words, like Shema, like Shema, another word that we'll look at later, that we understand one of its translations, but in its context, it means something yet further than that. Okay, so this is the word. And the outline of biblical usage says that it means to despise, to hold in contempt, to disdain. And holding contempt is pretty close to where it's getting to. If you want to understand what a word actually means, you got to use something like this, Blue Letter Bible. This is a good guide to kind of what the word might mean. And bear in mind that there's the different forms of the verb here, so we don't just read down the list and say, it could literally mean any of these things on this list. It depends what form of the verb is used, and to find that out, you need to use a verb conjugation chart. It's not quite the tool that people think it is. You've got to use it in a particular way. But there's another section on Blue Letter Bible, which is called the Gesenius's Hebrew Lexicon. Now, a lexicon is much closer to giving you a definition of a word, okay? And the entry for this word is here. I want to bring this to your attention. He who makes light of, okay? So it's to make light of something. It's to not esteem it, to lightly esteem something. In 1 Samuel 17:42 it says, and when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he despised him, for he was a youth. He didn't look at him and go, oh, he's just a kid. I hate him. He lightly esteemed him because he was a youth. 1 Samuel 10:24-27, and Shemuel said to all the people, do you see him whom Yehovah has chosen, that there is no one like him among all the people? And all the people shouted and said, let the king live. And Shemuel declared to the people the rulings of the kingdom and wrote it in a book and placed it before Yehovah. And Shemuel sent all the people away, each to his house. And Shaul went to his house too, to Giv'ah. And with him went brave men whose hearts Elohim had touched. But the sons of Belial said, what? Does this one save us? And they despised him and brought him no presents, but he kept silent. So again, it's not really that they hated him, they despised him. It's that they esteemed him lightly, and they were like, him? Whatever, we're not going to bring him any presents, we're not going to esteem him as the king. 2 Samuel 6:16 says, and it came to be when the ark of Yehovah came into the city of David, that Michal, daughter of Shaul, looked through a window and saw King David leaping and dancing before Yehovah. And she despised him in her heart. She saw him leaping about, dancing before Yehovah, and she didn't hate him. She didn't just instantly despise him. She looked at him and she lightly esteemed him. Like, look at this fool. What does he think that he's doing? This is what we are described as doing with the word of Elohim when we just decide, no, actually, this is more important. I'm going to do this. I'm going to break this commandment for this reason. I know, it's difficult, and whatever nonsense that people want to say is the reason that they're breaking the commandment, and people will have all these lists of excuses, and they'll make it sound wonderful, and they'll, you can see how they've deceived themselves through believing these things. But what they're actually doing is they're lightly esteeming the word of Elohim. 2 Samuel 12, 9-10, this is when David wants to take Uriah's wife, so he sends him off to die in battle. Why have you despised the word of Yehovah to do evil in his eyes? You've lightly esteemed it. You've thought that it was a thing that you could get advantage through breaking, and it's not this thing that you absolutely have to keep. So it's not this Shema response to it, where you have to keep it. It says it, so you do it. He doesn't have that response. He lightly esteems the word. You have killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and his wife you took to be your wife, and you have killed him with the sword of the children of Ammon. And now the sword does not turn aside from your house, because you have lightly esteemed me. Think about what it actually takes to do that. Think about what it takes to decide you're not going to do what the word of God says. You know what that says. But you actually think that you've got another choice in the matter, that you could do something else. Think about what that says to Yehovah. It is to lightly esteem him and to not understand what the word of God is and how important it is. 2 Chronicles 36, 11-16, Zidkiyahu was 21 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And he did evil in the eyes of Yehovah his Elohim. He did not humble himself before Yirmiyahu, the prophet, Jeremiah, who spoke from the mouth of Yehovah. And he also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him swear by Elohim. But he stiffened his neck and hardened his heart against turning to Yehovah, Elohim of Israel. Also, the heads of the priests and the people trespassed more and more according to all the abominations of the Gentiles, and they defiled the house of Yehovah, which he had set apart in Jerusalem. And Yehovah, Elohim of their fathers, sent to him by his messengers, rising up early and sending them, for he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they were mocking the messengers of Elohim and despising his words and scoffing at his prophets, until the wrath of Yehovah arose against his people, until there was no healing. You see the context that it's used in here. Okay, mocking, scoffing, despising. He shall turn unto the prayer of the destitute. It's Yehovah who will turn to their prayer. He will esteem the prayer of the destitute. He shall not despise their prayer. He will not lightly esteem it. Isaiah 53:3 is an interesting use of this, because it talks of Yeshua, obviously, and it says, despised and rejected by men, a man of pains and knowing sickness, and as one from whom the face is hidden, being despised, we did not consider him. Changes the tenor of that verse, doesn't it? It changes how you understand that verse, that men lightly esteemed him, lightly esteemed and rejected by men. They did not consider him. Just nothing. Ezekiel 16:58-59, you shall bear your wickedness and your abominations, declares Yehovah. For thus said the Master Yehovah, I shall deal with you as you have done, in that you have despised the oath by breaking the covenant. You've despised the oath. You've broken the covenant, and you might think, oh, well, everybody sins every now and again, don't they? I've just decided to break it. I just broke it. But it's to lightly esteem the oath that you've made with Yehovah, because you don't actually understand it. You don't understand the gravity of what you've entered into. You will understand the gravity when you stood before him, and everything else will flee from you, and there'll be nothing that you can reach out and touch for any kind of safety. All that there will be is you and him and your transgression against him. But do you see how words in Scripture, like despised, like keep, like hear, have a completely different connotation depending on the context in which they're used. And Hebrew is quite, I know it's almost a little bit more malleable than English, and we can have these words, but Hebrew is something that it's, you've really got to understand what the word itself means, and then you've got to put it into the context of the other words used around it. So our English translations actually fall very short of truly portraying this. So this is an important thing to look at. Ezekiel 22 verse 8, you have despised that which is set apart to me. You have profaned my Sabbaths. Again, to most people it just seems like nothing. Seems like nothing. Oh, I had to do it. I just made the choice to profane the Sabbath this week. What's the problem with I've just profaned it? In doing that, we're despising him. And this word does mean despise. It means to hate. But what I'm saying is there's a larger context to what it means to despise. It is to lightly esteem. To despise something, to hate something scripturally, is to lightly esteem it as well. Romans 2:23-24. You who make your boast in the Torah, through the transgression of the Torah, do you disrespect Elohim? And this is the same word. This is the word that's used in the Septuagint, the Greek word that's used in the Septuagint when it's this word despise, used here in the New Testament. Do you disrespect Elohim? So again, we get another little bit of a flavor of what this word means. For the name of Elohim is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you, as it has been written. And as we know, Paul draws these things from the Torah. He's not just, I'll write a load of stuff. There's no coincidence that it's got the word for despising the word of Elohim through transgression of the Torah. The name of Elohim is blasphemed among the Gentiles. He who walks in his straightness fears Yehovah, but he whose ways are crooked despises him. So if we look at the verse again, but the soul who does whatever defiantly, whether he is a native or a stranger, he reviles Yehovah, he blasphemes Yehovah, and that soul shall be cut off from among his people, because he has despised the word of Yehovah and has broken his command, he's transgressed the Torah. That soul shall certainly be cut off, his iniquity is upon him. So we can see the similarity to what Paul is saying here. He mentions blaspheming him, he mentions breaking the Torah, and he mentions despising him in the same verse. But something to focus on in this verse is what it's actually saying. We can understand the concepts within it now. When it uses this language, it always kind of draws my attention to it. When it talks about the soul that does this, okay, the soul shall certainly be cut off. And in the Septuagint, the word means obliterated. The soul shall be obliterated. And we read things like the soul who sins shall die. And we understand that it doesn't just mean the person who sins shall die. It's talking about their soul, their actual soul, their eternal destiny. The soul that does this. Because if you think about this command, there's so many people who just think that they're getting away with doing this command. They're getting away with lightly esteeming his word because they lightly esteem it inside. They're getting away with reviling Yehovah by breaking his commandments when they don't think that anyone can see. But what he's saying here in this command is, really, it doesn't matter, because the soul that does that, they're going to be cut off. They're going to be obliterated. They're going to suffer the second death. The soul that sins shall die. So all of the people who are going about breaking this and thinking, well, I'm not going to be put to death, am I? Death penalty doesn't stand anymore. It's not going to be that bad. Missing really what the verse is saying. Malachi 2 verse 9 says, and I also shall make you despised and low before all the people, because you are not cherishing my ways and are showing partiality in the Torah. I just think this is an amazing verse. I'll make you despised and low before all the people. We read the verse a few weeks ago where it said that their foolishness will become obvious to all. Okay, people do become despised and low in the eyes of the people. We were talking about this before as well, about how you can recognize in people the ones who are keeping the Torah and the ones who aren't. Because you are not cherishing my ways, and it's obvious if someone cherishes his ways or not, and they're showing partiality in the Torah. You're doing the Torah, all well and good, but you're showing partiality in it. You're doing the bits that you want to do. You're fashioning a God for yourself. Psalm 10 verse 13 says, Why do the wrong contemn Elohim? He has said in his heart, you will not require it. Okay? They lightly esteem him. This is what it is to despise his word. The wise fears and turns away from evil, but a fool passes through and is confident, not realizing the soul that sins shall die. The soul is going to be obliterated, cut off from among the people. Malachi 1:6 says, a son esteems his father and a servant his master. And if I am the father, where is my esteem? And if I am a master, where is my fear? Said Yehovah of hosts to you priests who lightly esteem my name. But you asked, in what way have we lightly esteemed your name? And they don't get it. We're priests, aren't we? Okay, this is absolutely as relevant to us. People show so much more respect to the people in their lives who they are immediately accountable for. But they will lightly esteem Yehovah. They'll lightly esteem the things that he said and think that they can transgress against them. Now we come to this. This is the mindset that I was talking about before. Okay? Law versus grace. This is how it is in the minds of some people, isn't it? We know actually scripturally. Charlie went through 2 Corinthians 3 last week where it says that the law can be written on our heart of stone. And that brings about death. It's the ministration of death. Or the law can be written on a heart of flesh by the Spirit. And that brings about life. So the actual dichotomy is between law and death and law and grace, or law and life. That's the actual dichotomy. It's not law and grace. They're not the things that are opposed to each other. But it's amazing. The people who despise his word, the people who hate Yehovah, how they use grace as opposed to the people who love Yehovah. And it's so telling. They think that they're achieving some kind of balance between the law and grace, because what they actually do is they use grace as a shield to hold up against his word. They use it to despise and hate his word. Oh, no, the word can't get me because of grace, because of grace. They actually want to escape his word. They don't want to embrace it. They don't want to cherish it. They want to escape it. So they'll think, we've got to rely on grace because it's the only thing that we've got. The only thing that we can depend on, because we're certainly not going to do his word. His word sounds terrible. We hate his word. We despise his word. So we're going to put grace as an opposite to it, when they're actually both Yehovah. They're both his word that he gives us grace. This is such an abhorrent meme or whatever. Commandments, law, do. Promises, gospel, done. Jesus has done it. We don't need to think about the word. He's done it. We can just forget about that horrible thing that we do not like to call to our minds, because we know that it brings death, because it's been written on a heart of stone. Psalm 81:15 says, those who hate Yehovah feign obedience. Their time would be forever. And it's so obvious, isn't it? That people do this. All of the word is actually about people who are keeping his Torah. It's only a very modern thing that people have stopped keeping his Torah and said that it's done away with. It was all actually about people who were Torah keepers. But those who hate him, they keep the Torah, they do the Torah, but they feign obedience to it. They pretend to be obedient to it, whereas in their hearts, they despise the word. They revile Yehovah, and they think that they've gotten away with it, and they say, he will not require it. We'll do these bits of it, but he's not going to require me to have done all of it and to have actually turned to him, to Shema his voice, to turn and love him with all my heart and all my soul. Because if they actually came to the comprehension of that, they would have to acknowledge the fact that they were going to die and that nothing was going to save them from that, and that their soul would be obliterated. Proverbs 1:22-26 says, how long, you simple ones, would you love simplicity? And shall scoffers delight in their scoffers, and fools hate knowledge? As they do. As I said, Yehovah talks about those who love him and those who hate him. And he talks about this attitude to absolutely everything in existence. You love simplicity, you hate knowledge. Turn at my reproof. See, I pour out my spirit on you. I make my words known to you. Because I called and you refused. I have stretched out my hand and no one inclined. Okay? Harkens back to many are called but few are chosen. And you spurned all my counsel and would not yield to my reproof. Let me also laugh at your calamity, mock when your dread comes. Yeshua said to them, if Elohim were your father, you would love me. Okay? For I came forth from Elohim, and I'm here. For I have not come of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not know what I say? Because you are unable to shema my word. You are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you wish to do. He was a murderer from the beginning. He has not stood in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So Yeshua, again, links here, shemaring the word with loving him. Okay? You're unable to shema my word. And because I speak the truth, you do not believe me. Who of you proves me wrong concerning sin? And if I speak the truth, why do you not believe me? He who is of Elohim shemas the words of Elohim. Therefore, you do not shema because you are not of Elohim. So as I say, we're looking at the concept of love and hate. And scriptures talk very kind of black and white about everything in life. And if they don't love Yehovah, they love another. And it's amazing the things that the scriptures say that men love. Psalm 4 verse 2 says, till when, O you sons of men, would you turn my esteem to shame? Would you love vapors, seek falsehood? Selah. And they do. The people don't even realize it. They say that they love Yehovah, but they don't. They love vapors. They love nonsense. They love lying vanities. They love falsehood. And they love it according to Scripture. 1 Kings 11, 1-2 says, and King Shlomo loved many foreign women in addition to the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Zidonian, and Hittite women. From the nations of whom Yehovah had said to the children of Israel, you do not go into them, and they do not go into you, for they shall certainly turn your hearts away after their God. Hearts plural, because it's quoting the commandment. They'll turn your hearts away after other gods. Shlomo clung to these in love. And Jehu, son of Hanani, the seer, went out to face him and said to King Jehoshaphat, do you help the wrong and love those who hate Yehovah? Therefore, the wrath of Yehovah is upon you. People don't really understand in their heads, in their conscious thoughts, that they are loving something else. It doesn't really enter into their conscious thought. However, they do delight in whatever it is. They delight in it. And Yehovah recognizes that if they delight in it, then what they're actually doing is they are loving that. So probably to this guy, if you said, do you love those who hate Yehovah? He'd be like, no, there's no way. I don't love those who hate Yehovah. However, in the situation, he chooses to help them. And thereby, Yehovah says that he loves them. Psalm 119, 118, again, you have made light of all those who stray from your laws, for falsehood is their deceit. They have not received the love of the truth. What they have been deceived by, what they love, is their falsehood. This is an interesting one for people to recognize that they actually love these things. Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those loving it eat its fruit. You can love death. It says that Balaam loved the wages of unrighteousness, which is death. Proverbs 8:33-36 says, listen to discipline and become wise and do not refuse it. Blessed is the man who shemas, watching daily at the gates, guarding at the posts of my doors. For whoever finds me finds life and shall obtain favor from Yehovah. But he who sins against me injures himself. All who hate me love death. An astounding and horrible matter has come to be in the land. The prophets have prophesied falsely, and the priests rule by their own hand. And my people have loved it so. And what are you going to do at the end of it? People love all of that false assurance, don't they? Charlie talked about it the other week. The people get together and they'll pat themselves on the back and they'll say how great it is, how great everything's going. Because they love the deceit. They love people speaking false words over them. Because when it comes to the truth, if someone speaks the truth to them, it is condemnation to them because they have not shamad and not received the love of the truth that they may be saved. So what do? The only thing that they can do in that situation is to love the lie. They have to love the deceit because it's the only thing that they can reconcile in their heads that actually makes any sense. Because otherwise they would be saying, this is going to kill me and it's brilliant, which wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. And do not plot evil in your heart against one another, and do not love a false oath. For all these I hate, declares Yehovah. And again, people would not say that they love a false oath. But in a situation where a false oath is given and maybe they benefit from it, it brings delight to them. And it is actually loving it in Yehovah's eyes. If you were of the world would love its own. But because you are not of the world, and I chose you out of the world, for that reason, the world hates you. Okay, and this is something that I think people struggle to reconcile as well. When the world doesn't hate them, you struggle to reconcile. They're like, well, you know, I'm called by Yehovah. I'm one of his people, but the world doesn't hate me. But notice what it says. The context of many are called, but few are chosen. I've chosen you out of the world. People will read through the scriptures and they'll be like, all of this applies to me. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. But they'll miss these details which are just there for those with ears to hear. If you were of the world would love its own. But because you are not of the world, and I chose you out of the world, for that reason the world hates you. The world despises you. Ezekiel 33:31. And they come to you as people do, and they sit before you as my people, and they hear your words. And this is the example. Okay, the word that's used here is Shema. But obviously these people don't trust and obey the words because it says, but they do not do them. Okay, so it can just mean to hear something plainly. It depends on the context again. Just like the word Shema. They hear your words, but they do not do them. But with their mouth, they show much love, but their hearts pursue their greedy gain. They show much love. They profess to love these words, but they do not do them. Their hearts, okay, which is where the word goes if you Shema, pursues what is opposite to Yehovah. Their hearts are for what Yehovah hates. Luke 16:13 tells us something incredibly interesting. It says, no servant is able to serve two masters. No one is able to serve two masters, okay? For either he shall hate the one and love the other, or else he shall cling to the one and despise the other. You are not able to serve Elohim and Mammon. And the same thing is true in all respects to all things. You either love Yehovah, you Shema his words, you Shema his laws, you cherish them, you love Yehovah, or you serve another master. This is what I mean when I say Yehovah is very black and white. He talks about those who love him and those who hate him. And there are so many that think that they love him when they actually, according to the word, hate him absolutely. Malachi 2:17 says, you have wearied Yehovah with your words. And you have said, in what way have we wearied him? In that you say, everyone who does evil is good in the eyes of Yehovah, and he's delighting in them. It's incredible. Think about the church. Think about the church in their sin, who says that now that Jesus died, all their sins are forgiven, they can continue on in sin, and Yehovah delights in his people. I don't know what particular lie this was that was in the minds of the people that Malachi was talking to, but this is one of those things where the word is just true generation after generation after generation. It manifests in different ways. Everyone who does evil is good in the eyes of Yehovah. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Yehovah loves you. Don't worry about it. You know, you want to please Yehovah, don't you? Yeah, I want to please Yehovah. Well, that's fine. That's all that it takes. Okay, just as long as you want to please him, then you'll get there eventually. He'll refine you with his word. So what the word actually says is, you're hating Yehovah at the moment because you're choosing something other than him, and you cannot serve two masters. You either serve Yehovah or you serve another. Isaiah 44, 8-19 says, do not fear nor be afraid. Have I not since made you hear and declared it? You are my witnesses. Is there an Eloah beside me? There is no other rock, I know not one. Those who make an idol, all of them are emptiness, and their delights do not profit. And they are their own witnesses. They neither see nor know, so that they are put to shame. Okay, all those who make an idol, we know what idols are. All of them are emptiness. All of them are lying vanities. Who would form a god and cast an idol that is of no value? You'd ask that question, but everyone would be a fairly accurate answer. See, all his companions are ashamed, and the workmen, they are but men. Let them be gathered together. Let them stand up. Let them fear. Let them be put to shame altogether. The craftsman in iron with the tools works, one in the coals, and fashions it with hammers, and works it with the strength of his arms. It's him that's fashioning this thing. Even so, he shall be hungry, he has no strength, he drinks no water, and is weary. This idol is nothing to him, it's emptiness. And yet people will cling to these things as if they're going to bring them salvation. The carpenter stretches out his rule. He outlines it with chalk, he fashions it with a plane, and he outlines it with the compass, and makes it like the figure of a man, according to the comeliness of a man, to remain in the house. You see what these people are doing? They're creating an idol after their own image. They're fashioning these things. This person measures it out with his rule. He outlines it himself. He outlines it with chalk. He fashions it himself. He makes it like unto the figure of a man. He changed the living Elohim into an image which is something that he appreciates. He cuts down cedars for himself and takes cypress and oak, which he raised among the trees of the forest. This is the most amazing thing. He has planted the pine, and the rain nourishes it. It's Yehovah who brings forth this thing. He's like, this is going to be brilliant. I'm going to make this idol. It's going to be fantastic. I've got all the designs for it, how it should be. I'll plant this tree that's going to turn into this idol. And then what is it? It's Yehovah who is actually bringing this thing into being so that he can sin by it. And it shall be for a man to burn, for he takes some of it and warms himself. He also kindles it and shall bake bread. He also makes a god and bows himself to it. He's made it a carved image and falls down before it. So he uses this idol. And this reminds me of, again, people profaning the Sabbath. And he'll warm himself by it. He'll get his provision from this idol. He thinks that he's benefiting himself by it. He warms himself by it. He bakes bread by it. All the while ignoring Yehovah. Half of it he shall burn in the fire. With this half he eats meat. He roasts a roast and is satisfied. He also warms himself and says, aha, I am warm. I have seen the fire. Thinks everything's going great. Thinks everything's going brilliantly. You fashion this idol. Look, this idol's now providing me with warmth. It's providing me with food. This is brilliant. My idol's the best God that there's ever been. And the rest of it he makes into a god, his carved image. He falls down before it and worships, prays to it and says, deliver me, for you are my God. This is where this God falls short. They do not know nor understand, for he has smeared their eyes from seeing and their hearts from understanding. Wow. No one recalls it to heart, nor is there knowledge nor understanding to say, I have burned half of it in the fire, I have also baked bread on its coals. I have roasted meat and eaten it, and shall I make the rest of it an abomination? Should I fall down before a log of wood? Feeding on ashes, a deceived heart turns him aside, and he does not deliver his soul, nor says, is there not a lie in my right hand? Doesn't know, got no comprehension. The only thing that this person perceives is what is right in front of them. They're nourishing themselves as a result of this, not realizing they're feeding on ashes. A deceived heart turns them aside. No one's going to know who's in this position until they're right there before Yehovah, and there's just nothing. There's nothing at all. There's none of this. They can't fool themselves with anything. All of it is just in an instant going to just be exposed for the emptiness and the worthlessness that it is. But this is the religion of most people. They won't seek Yehovah. They won't shema his word, so they don't end up loving him. They don't end up doing it. They don't end up having that faith. And they end up in this position because they can't do anything else other than create for themselves an idol, and then think everything's going brilliantly because of this idol that they've created. So we come to this question, okay? Obviously from this verse. And then I shall declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who work lawlessness. Charlie looked at an aspect that comes from this last week, okay? Those who are known by Yehovah are those who are in covenant with him. The word's got more to say on the issue. 1 Corinthians 8 verse 3 says, but if anyone loves Elohim, this one is known by him. And again, it's one of those statements that people can read and go, oh, I love Elohim. But we've seen what it is to love Elohim. We've seen where that love for Elohim comes from, the only place that it can stem from. They've all got their own idea of what it is to love Elohim, but they don't arrive there from shemaing the word. So it's not a true love for Elohim. It's a love for Elohim that goes so far until they actually end up despising him and lightly esteeming him. John 10, 3-5 says, the doorkeeper opens for him, and the sheep hear his voice. And he calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. So the sheep shema his voice, and he leads them out. And when he has brought out his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. Okay, they've shema'd it, they've begun to understand. And they shall by no means follow a stranger, but shall flee from him, because they do not know the voice of strangers, and they do not love the voice of strangers either. I am the good shepherd, and I know mine, and mine know me. So who are the ones that Yeshua knows? The ones that he knew from the beginning of time. Even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. My sheep shema my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. So these are the ones who are his. He says, I know mine. Who are the ones who are mine? The ones who shema his voice. John 14, 21-24 says, he who possesses my commands and cherishes them, it is he who loves me. And he who loves me shall be loved by my Father, and I shall love him and manifest myself to him. Yehudah, not the one from Kerioth, Judas Iscariot, said to him, Master, what has come about that you are able to manifest yourself to us and not to the world? Yeshua answered him, if anyone loves me, he shall cherish my word, and my Father shall love him, and we shall come to him and make our stay with him. He who does not love me does not cherish my words, and the word which you hear is not mine, but of the Father who sent me. Okay? So how do we know those who love Yehovah? When everybody in Christianity claims to love Yehovah, the ones who actually cherish his words, and it becomes obvious very, very quickly who actually cherishes his words and who lightly esteems them. It's him who loves Yeshua, or Yehovah, and he who does not love him is the one who does not cherish his words. Romans 8:29 tells us, because those whom he knew beforehand, so when he says, I never knew you, he knew these people right from the beginning. Those whom he knew beforehand, he also ordained beforehand to be conformed to the likeness of his Son, For him to be firstborn among many brothers, okay? You cannot help but be conformed to the image of Yeshua if you shema the word. If you shema the word, you cannot come to another destination other than to be conformed to the image of Yeshua. And therefore, you're one who he knows when he comes back, because he knew you from before the world began. So how does Yehovah get to know you? This is know in a different sense of the word. Deuteronomy 13, 1-4 says, when there arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he shall give you a sign or wonder, and the sign or wonder shall come true of which he has spoken to you, saying, let us go after other gods whom you have not known and serve them. Do not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for Yehovah your Elohim is trying you to know whether you love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart and all your soul. That's how he gets to know you. Know what's truly in your heart, because you can profess to love him. You fail the test that shows that you love him, then you don't. Walk after Yehovah your Elohim and fear him and cherish his commands and shema his voice and serve him and cling to him. You see how it's all just this intricately woven. Deuteronomy 8, God to do every command which I command you today, or cherish to do every command which I command you today, that you might live and shall increase and go in and shall possess the land of which Yehovah swore to your fathers. And you shall remember that Yehovah your Elohim led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you, to prove you, to know what is in your heart, whether you cherish his commands or not. Is something blocking the air vent on the projector? Oh, wait there. There. Just stop here and come back in a little bit, because I can see the fan on the projector and it's not turning. So verse 3 says, and he humbled you and let you suffer hunger and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, to make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yehovah. Your garments did not wear out on you, nor did your foot blister these 40 years. Thus you shall know in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so Yehovah your Elohim disciplines you. Therefore you shall cherish the commands of Yehovah your Elohim, to walk in his ways and to fear him. For, so this is the reasoning, okay? He's doing all this and he's doing it for a reason, and this is the reason that he's doing it. Yehovah your Elohim is bringing you into a good land, a land of streams of water, of fountains and springs that flow out of valleys and hills. Yeah, that's what the millennium's going to be like. A land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey. A land in which you eat bread without scarcity, in which you do not lack at all. A land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills you dig copper. And you shall eat and be satisfied, and shall bless Yehovah your Elohim for the good land which he has given you. Be on guard lest you forget Yehovah your Elohim by not cherishing his commands and his judgments and his laws which I command you today. So the reason that he's doing it, the reason that he wants to know what's in our hearts, is because he's going to bring us to a land that's going to be so amazing. We're going to have complete lack of want in the land. See, Adam and Eve lived in a place like this. They lived in the Garden of Eden. And he could have just allowed them to dwell there forever. And you know, if it's in a man's heart to please himself, to do what makes sense, then you just continue forever and you're like, oh yes, it's fine here. I don't even need to sin. He would never know what is in a man's heart unless he tests them. So what did he do? He sent the tester. Sent Hasatan along with the temptation to them. You know, he could have just left the tree of the knowledge of good and evil out of the garden if he wanted to, but that wouldn't have really achieved what he wanted. He didn't want a people who just did what was right just because that was the best thing for them to do. It harks back into what we were talking about at the beginning, your reasoning for actually keeping the commands. He wants a people that he knows what's in their heart, that he's brought them tribulation, he's brought them testing, and they've decided what's right. And this is the entire reason, because he's going to bring them to this land. He's going to bring us to this land So he wants to know what's in our hearts. He's going to bring us to a place that's even more amazing than this. This was in the fallen creation before the world was renewed. Lest you eat and be satisfied and build lovely houses and shall dwell in them. And your herds and your flocks increase, and your silver and your gold are increased, and all that you have is increased, that your heart then becomes lifted up, and you forget Yehovah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim from the house of bondage. This he doesn't want to happen. Okay? He doesn't want it to take us all to the millennium, to give us a place which is so amazing, and we go, this place is amazing, we'll just forget about Yehovah now, because what's the point in even thinking about him? Who led you through that great and awesome wilderness, fiery serpents and scorpions and thirst, where there was no water, who brought water for you out of the flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna which your fathers did not know, in order to humble you and to try you, to do you good in the end. And so he leads us through this wilderness of life, if you want to be a little bit cliched. You then shall say in your heart, my power and the strength of my hand have made for me this wealth. But you shall remember Yehovah your Elohim, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, in order to establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is today. And it shall be, if you by any means forget Yehovah your Elohim, and follow other gods and serve them, and bow yourself to them, I have warned you this day that you shall certainly perish. This is him swearing the oath to them. Okay, he swears that they will perish. He swears in, like I said before, Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, that their descendants will then be kicked out of the land and Israel will not dwell there anymore. Like the nations which Yehovah is destroying before you, so you are to perish because you did not shema the voice of Yehovah your Elohim. That's where I was going to take a break, but it seems a little bit inappropriate now, doesn't it, after we've just had a little bit of a break. But we'll have a break there, because then we can fully engage with the next part. Okay, so in this part, we're actually going to get into the meat of the Torah portion, which, as I say, is a very little Torah portion. I just wanted to look at the actual actions of the people from another perspective. I'm not necessarily saying, you know, they were actually just disobedient, but they were doing it because it was easy. But I just wanted to look at that concept of what it really is to love Yehovah, what it is to hate him. In this part, we're going to look at some of the parts of the Torah portion. And bear in mind, when I was going through this, I was thinking, this is such a tiny, tiny Torah portion. I'm going to need to focus on bits of it and delve into it in a way that I perhaps normally wouldn't. So you're going to get a little glimpse of what my mind's like when it's working on something that it's thinking that you really have to go deep into this. But I think it's interesting anyway. Okay, so Exodus 38:24 says, all the gold prepared for the work, in all the work of the set apart place, and it was the gold of the wave offering. Okay, so hold on to that for now. The gold is a wave offering. Came to be 29 talents and 730 shekels, according to the shekel of the set apart place. So this is when they were bringing all of their offering, basically. They brought the gold, and it was a wave offering before Yehovah. And the silver from the ones counted of the congregation was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels, according to the shekel of the set apart place. So this was the instruction that was given when a census is taken of the children of Israel. You must take from them a half shekel as an atonement for their lives. We'll look at the actual command in a second. It says, a beker, half a shekel for a head, according to the shekel of the set apart place, for everyone passing over to those counted from 20 years old and above, for 603,550 men. That's how many of them there were. Now this actually tells us quite a lot of information just in this. It can be read to anyway. We've looked before at the whole idea of bringing the half shekel and what that will involve, and we've got teachings on the channel called Will Yeshua Pay Your Ransom? Okay? Well, I'm just going to look at it just to refresh our memories on a little bit of it. In Exodus 30:11-12, it says, "And Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, when you lift up the heads of the children of Israel to register them, then each one shall give an atonement for his life to Yehovah when you register them, so that there is no plague among them when you register them." And this is literally what it says in the Hebrew, when you lift their heads up. Sometimes in some translations it says things like when you number them or when you count them. But the Hebrew literally says when you lift up their heads. So that there is no plague among them when you register them. So when you take a census, if you don't get this half a shekel from every person, then there will be a plague. In Matthew 17:24-26, it says, "And when they came into Capharnaum, those who received the tax came to Kepha and says, 'Does your teacher not pay the tax?' So this was the head tax which was taken at the time. They would take this tax from the people and they would do a census, and it would go towards the building of the temple, called the temple tax or the head tax. So he asked Peter and says, 'Does your teacher not pay the tax?' He said, 'Yea.' And when he came into the house, Yeshua spoke to him first, saying, 'What do you think, Shimon? From whom do the kings of the earth take toll or tax? From their own children or from the strangers?' So the tax is paid to Yehovah. He is the king. Yeshua is saying, what about the kings of the earth? Who do they take tax from? Is it from their own children or from strangers?" Kepha then said to him, "From the strangers." Yeshua said to him, "Then the children are exempt." And he's teaching him through this. He's saying, we're the children of Yehovah. Are we going to pay the head tax? Is that what's required of us? Who do the kings of the earth take it from? They don't take it from the children. The children are exempt. Which is interesting because we find out who the children of Elohim are. And paying of this head tax is going to be something that we are not going to want to do when it comes down to it. Okay, so 1 John 3 tells us who the children are. Verse 8 says, "The one doing sin is of the devil, because the devil has sinned from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of Elohim was manifested, to destroy the works of the devil. Everyone having been born of Elohim does not sin, because his seed stays in him, and he is powerless to sin, because he has been born of Elohim. In this the children of Elohim and the children of the devil are manifest. Everyone not doing righteousness is not of Elohim, neither the one not loving his brother." So how do we know who the children of Elohim are? The ones doing righteousness. So the children are exempt. The ones doing righteousness are exempt. Okay? If you remember what we were looking at, we've got the gold that was brought, and we've got the silver that was brought by the people. We do not want to be the ones bringing the silver, and we'll see why in a little bit. Revelation 7 tells us something interesting. It tells us of a census that is taken of the children of Israel. It's telling us of a time when the children of Israel are going to be counted. "And after this, I saw 4 messengers standing in the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. I saw another messenger coming up from the rising of the sun, holding the seal of the living Elohim. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 messengers to whom it was given to harm the earth and the sea, saying, 'Do not harm the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our Elohim upon their foreheads.' And I heard the number of those who were sealed." So we've got this numbering of the children of Israel, which is taking place at this point. 144,000 sealed out of the tribes of the children of Israel. And it goes on and it tells us that there are 12,000 of each tribe that were sealed. And Revelation 14, 1-5 tells us information about these 144,000. It says, "And I looked, and I saw a lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written upon their foreheads." So they are sealed, and they have the father's name written on their foreheads. We've looked at what to have the father's name is. It's to do the commandments. It tells us more. It says, "I heard the voice out of the heaven like the voice of many waters, and like the voice of loud thunder. I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. And no one was able to learn that song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. They are those who were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. They are those following the Lamb wherever he leads them on. They were redeemed from among men, being firstfruits to Elohim and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no falsehood. They're blameless before the throne of Elohim. These are the ones doing righteousness. These are the sons. And so they are exempt from paying the head tax. They're exempt from having, from when they're counted, having to bring the payment for the head tax. They, in fact, as Charlie got into when he did, when Yeshua, will Yeshua pay your ransom? They actually have it paid by Yeshua. And it actually, when it says for each head, the word there is Golgoth, which means skull, and obviously alludes to Golgotha, where their head tax was actually paid. What I want you to notice about these people, that they're first fruits to Elohim and to the Lamb. The gold was a wave offering, okay? The first fruits are a wave offering as well, okay? So we've got the gold being the wave offering, and these people are a wave offering, and these are the ones who don't have to pay the silver. Revelation 3:7-12 says, and to the messenger of the assembly in Philadelphia write, he who is set apart, he who is true, he who has the key of David, he who opens and no one shuts, and shuts and no one opens, says this, I know your works, see I have set before you an open door, and no one is able to shut it, that you have little power, yet have cherished my word, and have not denied my name. See, I'm giving up those of the congregation of Satan, who say they are Yehudim and are not, but lie. See, I am making them come and worship before your feet, and know that I have loved you, because you have kept my word of endurance. I also shall keep you from the hour of trial, the hour of testing that is to come upon all the world, to try those who dwell on the earth. See, I am coming speedily. Hold what you have, that no one take your crown. He who overcomes, I shall make him a supporting post in the dwelling place of Elohim. And he shall by no means go out, and I shall write on him the name of my Elohim, sealed in their foreheads with the name of Elohim. And he shall by no means go out, I shall write on him the name of Elohim, and the name of the city of my Elohim, the renewed or the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my Elohim, and my new name. Okay? Interesting, because he said that he'll make him a supporting post, yeah? We're looking at this gold that was brought, and the silver that was brought, and the bronze that was brought. Now, if we look for this word, post, in the Septuagint to see which part of the tabernacle it's actually referring to, it's referring to this. The posts he gilded with gold. Okay, so we've got the gold, the supporting posts. They're the 144,000, the ones who are redeemed from the earth, the ones who are the first fruits offering, which is the wave offering before Yahovah. So that's where your gold comes in. Okay? Your silver comes from the head tax, remember. Revelation 20, verse 4 says, and I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given to them, and the lives of those who had been beheaded because of the witness they bore to Yeshua, and because of the word of Elohim. These people have had their heads lifted up, okay? But they were not allowed to be counted among the 144,000, so they're not counted among the 144,000, or more accurately, they counted themselves as Israel, yet they were not allowed to because the head tax had not been paid for them, because it was paid at Golgotha by Yeshua for the sons. Only the sons are exempt. So the gold were exempt from paying the head tax. Okay? This is how the silver is paid. And remember, the silver is used to make the tabernacle of Elohim as well. It says the 100 talents of silver were for casting the sockets of the set-apart place and the bases of the veil, 100 sockets from the 100 talents, a talent for each socket. And of the 1,775 shekels, he made hooks for the columns and laid their tops and made bands for them. So this is what the silver is used for. Now we've got 2 harvests at the end of the world. In fact, we've got 3. But as for the believers, we've got 2. We've got the barley harvest, which is bringing the first fruits of the barley harvest, and that is a wave offering that's brought before Yahovah. The next harvest is the wheat harvest, okay? Now, if you remember the silver died. They had their heads cut off. So they're not part of the harvest at the end of the world because they're not the ones who are found alive. You've got the first fruits that are offered first, the barley harvest, which is offered first. They're the 144,000. But there's another harvest that has to come, and it's not the silver. And it says, and the bronze of the wave offering. So we've got another wave offering which is brought, another first fruits. And you bring the first fruits of the wheat harvest also and wave that. That's presented before Elohim. The bronze of the wave offering was 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. And with it he made the sockets for the door of the tent of meeting, and the bronze altar, and the bronze grating for it, and all the utensils for the altar, and the sockets for the courtyard all around, and the bases for the courtyard gate, and the pegs for the dwelling place, and all the pegs for the courtyard all around. So the bronze are a part of the tabernacle of Elohim too. And we looked at how us being a body make the tabernacle of Elohim. And we've got the gold here of those at the end. We've got the silver that's brought, and we've got the bronze here. So do we find the bronze anywhere in Scripture being offered before the throne? Revelation 7, 9-15 says, after this I looked and saw a great crowd, which no one was able to count, out of all nations and tribes and peoples and tongues. Interesting. These are not people from Israel. They're out of all of the nations. So we've got those two lots who counted themselves as part of Israel. We've got the gold, the sons who are exempt. And we've got the silver, who paid the head tax themselves for being, both of them for being counted as part of Israel. Then we've got these people. These people are the bronze, and they're from all the nations, tribes, peoples, and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, dressed in white robes and palm branches in their hands, and crying out in a loud voice, saying, deliverance belongs to our Elohim who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. And all the messengers stood around the throne, and the elders and the four living creatures, and fell on their faces before the throne and worshipped Elohim, saying, Amen, the blessing and the esteem and the wisdom and the thanksgiving and the respect and the power and the might to our Elohim forever and ever. Amen. And one of the elders responded saying to me, who are these dressed in white robes, and where did they come from? Good question. And I said to him, Master, you know. And he said to me, these are those coming out of the great tribulation, having washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So what have they done? These are the people who came to repentance during the great tribulation. These are the ones who are found alive and so are harvested and presented before the throne as the second wave offering, which is the wave offering of the wheat harvest. These people are ones who are presented after the gold is presented. After the barley harvest is presented, now we have the wheat harvest being presented. Because of this, they are before the throne of Elohim and serve him day and night in his dwelling place. And he who sits on his throne, shall spread his tent over them. Again, they're part of the tabernacle of Elohim. They're the bronze. Now, 2 Chronicles 27, verse 5. I thought this was just interesting. It doesn't really prove anything. But in the offering that was brought of the gold, the silver, and the bronze, if we're saying that the gold is the barley harvest, the bronze is the wheat harvest, and then we've got the silver being paid, there were 100 talents of silver that were paid for the tabernacle. And interestingly here it says, he fought with the king of the Ammonites and prevailed over them. And the children of Ammon gave him in that year 100 talents of silver. Okay, they're the ones who are not part of the harvest. So it's got to be silver that's given there. And 10,000 cores of wheat and 10,000 of barley. So we've got the barley, the wheat, and the silver all being given. Again, it's just something that adds a little bit of a fleck of color to the picture. So we've got these two harvests, the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. Thing is, though, there's a third harvest, isn't there? There's the grape harvest. So do we see the grape harvest in the book of Revelation? Revelation 14:14 says, and I looked and saw a white cloud, and sitting on the cloud was one like the son of Adam, having on his head a golden crown, and in his head the sharp sickle. Be a bit violent. In his hand the sharp sickle. And another messenger came out of the dwelling place, crying with a loud voice to the one sitting on the cloud, send your sickle and reap, because the hour is come for you to reap, because the harvest of the earth is ripe. And the one sitting on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. And another messenger came out of the dwelling place which is in the heaven, and he too held a sharp sickle. And another messenger came out from the altar, having authority over the fire. And he cried with a loud cry to him, having the sickle, saying, "Send your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, because her grapes are ripe." Here's the grape harvest. And the messenger thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of Elohim. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and the blood came out of the winepress up to the bridles of the horses for about 300 kilometers. This is not one of the harvests that you want to be involved in. You want to be alive at the end, but you don't want to be in the grape harvest. The barley harvest, the ones who follow all of his word. You don't want to be in the ones who had to come to repentance during the tribulation. And you especially don't want to be the ones who counted themselves as a part of Israel and had to be put to death to be counted as part of the tabernacle. It's not what you want. Now we can see something interesting from this, okay? The gold of the 144,000 is very interesting because of the gold, there are 29 talents, 730 shekels, which is in total 2,470 shekels, okay? The silver, 100 talents, 1,775 shekels, which is 7,775 shekels. 70 talents, 2,400 shekels of the bronze is 6,600 shekels. So we know how many of the gold, of the silver, and of the bronze are given for the tabernacle, okay? Interesting that of the gold, we're given a number. Because since we've got a number for the gold, that means we can work out the number of the silver and the number of the bronze. Now, I'm not saying that this is true, it's just an interesting way to look at it. Of the silver, 453,279. Of the gold, of the bronze, 384,777, okay? Which would give us a total number of those who are brought in at the end into the tabernacle of Elohim. And the total would be 982,056, okay? I'm not saying that this is true, I'm just saying I see an awful lot in this that suggests that this is the way that it is. And if that is the way that it is, this would logically be the number of people who are brought in at the end. I shared that just because I thought it was interesting. Now, we can learn something else from the gold, the silver, and the bronze. Okay, this is a picture, this is what you call an electron shell diagram of a gold atom. Okay? Just basically shows how many electrons are orbiting the gold atom. It actually doesn't, they don't orbit regularly, they orbit all around the places they orbit. But gold is quite an interesting material, and it tells us something. Okay, we've got the gold, who are the ones who keep all of the commandments of God. And they're just the people who are brought in at the end. You know, I'm sure that there are gold, silver, and bronze among those who have died previously in Messiah as well, and how they're reckoned, I'm not going to speculate on. But the gold of the tabernacle, okay, interesting thing about gold is it is the least reactive of the metals. It's part of 3 metals which are known as noble metals. Noble gases are inert gases, basically. The noble metals aren't completely inert, but they are very, very resistant to corrosion. They're very, very resistant to being chemically changed as well. They all have electron shells that are full of other electrons, okay? Now, gold is very interesting because gold, as a metal, is not very reactive. Okay, it's very hard to influence gold in any way. The thing about gold, though, is it's like that when it's as a metal, when it's together with other gold atoms. If a gold atom is on its own, it is very reactive. It reacts very strongly with other gold atoms, but it is also susceptible to reacting with other things. That's when it's an atom that's on its own. And it makes me think of this scripture. Hebrews 10:23-27 says, "Let us hold fast the confession of our expectation without yielding, for he who promised is trustworthy. And let us be concerned for one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together as is the habit of some, but encouraging, and so much more as you see the day coming near." Now, I've heard people explain away this scripture and say, oh, it's talking about the feasts. It's saying don't stop doing the feasts. But that's nonsense, isn't it? If we read it in context here, it's saying, let us be concerned for one another, stir up love and good works. Don't stop meeting together so that you can do this, as is the habit of some, but encouraging, and so much more as you see the day approaching. So much more. It's much more important being together. Okay? Don't be a gold atom that's off on its own, that is susceptible to other influence. Be part of the gold metal. For, again, he's saying, because, this is my reasoning here, if we sin purposely, after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sin for us, sacrifice for sin, but some fearsome anticipation of judgment and a fierce fire which is about to consume the opponents. Okay, so this is what he's saying. He's saying, don't stop meeting together. Be part of the gold metal in our analogy. Okay, stir up in one another. Stir up love and good works. Okay, encourage one another so that you can avoid this and so that you can avoid it for other people as well. Because if you're a gold atom off on its own, then you're going to be influenced by other things. Okay, if you're part of the gold metal, then you become resilient to these things. And this is not going to be the outcome for you, and it's not going to be the outcome for those around you either. So I thought that was interesting. Now, silver is also a noble metal. 3 metals: gold, silver, and copper. And copper is the word that's actually used in the Hebrew for the building of the tabernacle. So silver, again, it's a little bit more reactive than gold. It'll dissolve, for example, in nitric acid and make silver nitrate. Okay? And if there is, forget what it is now, I think it's hydrogen sulfide in the air, then it will tarnish. So you can tarnish silver. Okay? But it is also similarly unreactive. And it's interesting that these are the things that the tabernacle ends up being made out of. The ones who will give their lives, okay, in order to pay their ransom, who will actually show their faith in the word when it actually comes to the crunch, and they'll do it then. But they are susceptible to being tarnished. And it's a very, very accurate picture of those people as well. And then there's copper. Okay, you'll notice that each of them has a descending order of electron shells around it as well. And copper will react with other things. It just reacts more slowly than the other elements. I think that these things are an amazing picture for the elements that the tabernacle are actually comprised of, the elements of the body. It should really be no surprise that the word of Elohim underlies everything in the universe. And so obviously the gold is going to have the characteristics of the ones that the gold represents. But I just thought it was interesting anyway. So in Exodus 39, it says, "And of the blue and the purple and scarlet material, they made woven garments to do service in the set-apart place. And they made the set-apart garments, which were for Aharon, as Yehovah had commanded Moshe. And he made the shoulder garment of gold, of blue and purple and scarlet material, and of fine woven linen. And they beat out sheets of gold and cut it into threads to work it with the blue and purple and scarlet material and the fine linen and the work of a skilled workman. And they made shoulder pieces, for to join it, it was joined at its 2 edges. And the embroidered band of the shoulder garment that was on it was of the same work of gold and blue and purple and scarlet material, fine woven linen, as Yehovah had commanded Moshe." See, this Torah portion is pretty much, as I say, saying, and then they did that thing that they were told to do before, and then they did that thing just as they were commanded to. Okay? "And they made the shoam stones plated, in a plated work of gold, engraved the signets, and engraved according to the names of the sons of Yisrael. And he put them on the shoulders of the shoulder garment, stones of remembrance for the sons of Israel, as Yehovah commanded Moshe. And he made the breastplate a work of a skilled workman, like the work of the shoulder garments of gold and blue and purple and scarlet material and of fine woven linen. It was square. They made the breastplate double, its length a span, its width a span, doubled. And they filled it with 4 rows of stones, a row of ruby, a topaz, and an emerald was the first row. And the second row, a turquoise, a sapphire, and a diamond. And the third row, a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst. And the fourth row, a beryl, a shoam, and a jasper, set in a plated work of gold in their settings. Now this is fascinating to me, okay? All of these stones that are set there, and there's 12 stones. Okay, I don't know if it reminds anyone else of another part of Scripture. Well, if we look at Ezekiel 28, 11 to 13, it says, "And the word of Yehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation for the king of Zor. And you shall say to him, Thus said the Master Yehovah, you were sealed up, a pattern complete in wisdom and perfect in loveliness. You were in a den, the garden of Elohim. Every precious stone was your covering, the ruby, topaz, and diamond, beryl, shoam, and jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald, and gold. The workmanship of your settings and mountings was prepared for you on the day you were created." Okay? So this is the king of Tyre. This is what it says in the Hebrew, Zor. But notice the stones that it uses. A ruby, topaz, diamond. We've got them here. Ruby, topaz, diamond. Beryl, shoam, jasper. Beryl, shoam, jasper. Sapphire, turquoise, emerald, and gold. And in the breastplate, we've got emerald, turquoise, sapphire, and they were set in a plated work of gold. So this breastplate is actually very, very similar to the high priest's breastplate. And when we read about this guy, I don't know, he's not a very good being, okay, and that's what we're going to look at next. And he was adorned with all these things when he was created, and obviously he thought he was amazing. And I just think it's funny that when Yehovah came to make the high priest's breastplate, he was like, I'm going to give him an extra 3 stones. I'm going to give him these as well, just to make him that much better. And if we remember that, obviously it's a picture of Yeshua in the tabernacle, the high priest in the tabernacle. So this person was in Eden. He was a covering cherub, okay? He was one of the creations of Yehovah, and yet Yeshua is made, and he's in heaven, but now he's more perfect and more complete than him. But this guy is an interesting person to look at. It tells us here very plainly, Son of man, take up a lamentation for the king of Zor, okay, the king of Tyre. Now, people get Ezekiel 28 so mixed up, and they get Isaiah 14 so mixed up. I don't know if you're familiar with the fact that Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14 are both said to be about Satan, okay? But they're not about Satan. Take up a lamentation for the king of Zor. Now, if he's saying the king of Zor was in Eden, which is clearly what it's saying, say this to the king of Zor, you were in Eden. This is why people flip out and they're like, oh no, it must be talking about Satan because Satan was in Eden. It's because they don't understand what a king is, okay? What a king is in Scripture. So it's important for us to understand this. Daniel 8, verse 20 says, the ram which you saw having 2 horns, so this ram with 2 horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. Notice it does not say the horns are the kings of Media and Persia. It says the ram are the horns, which doesn't make sense in English. Okay, in Hebrew it's because the plurals are used around these words, so we know it's pluralized. So how can the ram be 2 things? Well, in verse 21 it says, and the male goat, he sees this vision of these beasts. It says, and the male goat is the king of Grecia, okay? And the large horn between its eyes is the first king. What? This passage doesn't really seem to make much sense, does it? You've got the king of Grecia with the first king between his eyes. That doesn't make much sense. How is this possible? It's possible because it's not talking about human kings. It's talking about spiritual entities. It's talking about principalities and powers. And I'll show you that in the rest of Daniel in a second. Okay, these principalities and powers rule over a certain dominion. So the ram which you saw are the kings of Media and Persia, not human kings. Okay? Spiritual entities that are over Media and Persia. The male goat is the king of Grecia, the spiritual entity, the king of Grecia. The large horn between its eyes is the first king, the first human king. When we see beasts in Scripture, they represent spiritual entities. When we see horns on the beasts, they represent the human power which is empowered by this beast, basically. So we've got the king of Grecia, the large horn between its eyes being the first king who turned out to be Alexander the Great. Now Daniel 10:13 gives us a real clear insight into this. It says, but the prince of Persia withstood me. This is Gabriel that's talking here. He's in a battle with the prince of Persia, 21 days. And see, Michael, one of the chief princes, this is the archangel Michael, one of the chief princes came to help me, for I had been left alone there with the kings of Persia. Do you think that Gabriel was sat there with all of these men going, wow, I can't believe I've been left with you lot? He wasn't, was he? He was battling the prince of Persia and he was left with the kings of Persia. These are spiritual entities. Archangel Michael is definitely a spiritual entity and he's one of the chief princes. Daniel 10:20 says, and he said, do you know why I have come to you? And now I return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I have left, see, the prince of Grecia shall come. Because there's a hierarchy among the princes and the kings. The prince is actually above the king. Okay? That's why it says of Yeshua in Revelation 1 verse 5, from Yeshua Messiah, the trustworthy witness, the firstborn from the dead, and the prince of the kings of the earth. Okay, so these kings are spiritual entities which reconciles the entire thing. So now if we read Ezekiel 28, it says, the word of Yehovah came to me saying, son of man, take up a lamentation for the king of Zor, spiritual entity who's over the land of Zor, or the land of Tyre. And you shall say to him, thus said the master Yehovah, you were sealing up a pattern complete in wisdom, perfect in loveliness. You were in Eden, the garden of Elohim. Every precious stone was your covering, the ruby, topaz, and diamond, beryl, shoam, and jasper, sapphire, turquoise, emerald, and gold. The workmanship of your settings and mountings was prepared for you on the day you were created. You were the anointed cherub that covered, the covering cherub. And I placed you. You were on the set-apart mountain of Elohim. You walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. I don't know how people read this and think it's about Satan, okay? It's clearly about this guy. They just don't understand how that's possible. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created until unrighteousness was found in you, okay? I don't think that any human man that can be said of that they were perfect from the day that they were created until unrighteousness was found in them, unless it meant unrighteousness was pretty much found straight away. By the greatness of your trade, you became filled with violence within, and so sinned. So I thrust you from the mountain of Elohim, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Your heart was lifted up because of your loveliness. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I threw you to the earth. I laid you before kings to look at you. You profaned your set-apart places by your many iniquities, by the unrighteousness of your trading. Therefore, I brought forth fire from your midst. It has devoured you, and I turned you to ashes upon the earth before the eyes of all who see you. Okay? This makes so much more sense when we read books like the book of Revelation. Okay, the book of Revelation talks about kings and stuff, and people try to force it into being men. There's prophecies in Ezekiel which talk about the end times, and they're all about the chief princes doing this and the kings doing that. And people try to reconcile it all, and they get all of their eschatology all completely mixed up. I would say go and read the book of Revelation again with this in your mind, and it will make so much more sense. And it would make so much more sense for these things, these battles at the end of time, to have been spiritual battles, because it's not going to be men fighting at the end of time. It's going to be it all being reckoned out in the spiritual realm. What other conclusion could there have been? All who knew you among the peoples were astonished at you. Waste you shall be and cease to be forever. Okay, interesting one for anybody who believes in eternal suffering in hell. But anyway, Isaiah 14 is the same. People will say, this is Satan. These are the 5 I wills of Satan, people will say. But it's not Satan. It tells us who it is. It says, and it shall be in the day Yehovah gives you rest from your sorrow and from your trouble and the hard service in which you were made to serve, and that you shall take up this proverb against the king of Babel and say, how the oppressor has ceased, the gold gatherer has ceased. Yehovah has broken the staff of the wrong, the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with ceaseless blows, he who ruled against the Gentiles in displeasure, is persecuted and no one restrains. All the earth is at rest and at peace. They shall break forth into singing. Even the cypress trees rejoice over you, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since you were cut down, no woodcutter has come up against us. Sheol from beneath is excited about you, to meet you at your coming. It stirs up the dead for you. All the chief ones of the earth it is raised up from their thrones, all the kings of the Gentiles. All of them respond and say to you, have you also become weak as we? Have you become like us? Your arrogance has been brought down to Sheol, and the sound of your stringed instruments, the maggot is spread under you, and worms cover you. How you have fallen from the heavens, O Halel, son of the morning. That's what it says in the Hebrew. The word Lucifer doesn't exist. Lucifer is not Satan. Okay, Lucifer is the name for Halel, and Halel is the king of Babylon. He's the spiritual entity over the area of Babylon. You have been cut down to the ground, you who laid low the Gentiles. For you have said in your heart, let me go up to the heavens, let me raise my throne above the stars of Ale, and let me sit in the mount of meeting on the sides of the north. Let me go up to the heights of the clouds, let me be like the Most High. You are brought down to Sheol, to the sides of the pit. And people will say, these are the 5 I wills of Satan, or the 5 let me's of Satan. Now, I'm not saying that Satan doesn't share these similar aspirations, but that's simply because they're both in rebellion against Yehovah, both being these created angelic beings, or spiritual beings, or whatever. They have the same aspirations. But just so everyone knows, Lucifer is not Satan. Okay, we should take a break there. We'll come back and finish off reading the Torah portion. Okay, so the rest of the Torah portion, very much like what we saw before. So we'll go through it quickly. And they made the braided chains of corded work for the breastplate at the ends of clean gold. And they made the 2 settings of gold and 2 gold rings, and put the 2 rings on the 2 ends of the breastplate. And they put the 2 cords of gold in the 2 rings on the end of the breastplate, and the 2 ends of the 2 cords they fastened in the 2 settings, and put them on the shoulder pieces of the shoulder garment in the front. And they made 2 rings of gold, and put them on the 2 ends of the breastplate, on the edge of it, which was on the inward side of the shoulder garment. And they made 2 gold rings, and put them on the shoulder pieces underneath the shoulder garment, on the front of it, close to the seam, above the embroidered band of the shoulder garment. And they bound the breastplate by means of its rings to the rings of the shoulder garment with the blue cord, so that it would be above the embroidered band of the shoulder garment, and that the breastplate would not come loose from the shoulder garment, as Yehovah had commanded Moshe. Now, the thing that just came to mind, reading through that, okay, said in Exodus 25, this is the contribution that you take up from them, and then it gives us the stuff that they were meant to bring for the breastplate. Then it says, and they shall make me a set-apart place, and I shall dwell in their midst, according to all that I show you, the pattern of the dwelling place and the pattern of all its furnishings. Make it exactly so. The thing that comes to mind when I was reading this is that if we want to imagine what it's like in heaven right now, if we want to imagine what Yeshua is doing, reading this really brings it into sharp focus, because they were preparing it exactly as Yehovah commanded Moshe, and they had to make it exactly after the pattern of the dwelling place. So what they made there and how Yeshua is attired as he's in heaven is exactly the same. And he made the robe of the shoulder garment of woven work, all of blue. And the openings of the robe was in the middle, like the opening in a scaled armor with a woven binding all around the open, so that it would not tear. And they made on the hem of the robe pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet material twined. And they made bells of clean gold and put the bells between the pomegranates on the hem of the robe, all around between the pomegranates. A bell and a pomegranate, a bell and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe for the service as Yehovah had commanded Moshe. And it's funny, think of Yeshua again in heaven walking around. He's got all of these bells and these pomegranates around the hem of his garment. And they made the long shirt of fine linen, the work of a weaver for Aharon and his sons, and a turban of fine linen, and the turban ornaments of fine linen, and short trousers of fine woven linen, and a girdle of fine woven linen with blue and purple and scarlet material, the work of an embroiderer, as Yehovah had commanded Moses. And they made the plate of the set-apart sign of dedication of clean gold, and wrote on it an inscription like the engraving of a signet, holiness to Yehovah. And they put it on a blue cord to fasten it above on the turban, as Yehovah had commanded Moshe. And all the work of the dwelling place of the tabernacle of meeting was completed. And the children of Israel did according to all that Yehovah commanded Moshe, so they did. So we've got a high priest in heaven. He's got his plate on, it says holiness to Yehovah. And it just reminded me of a couple of scriptures. Isaiah 44, verse 5, it's just interesting because I don't think I've ever read it like this before, but it popped out at me. One says, I belong to Yehovah. Another calls himself by the name of Yaakov. Interesting language there. One says of himself, I belong to Yehovah. Another calls himself after the name of Jacob. Another, though is different, writes on his hand, like we're to have on our forehead and on our hand, the commandments. Okay? Another actually writes on his hand. In other words, he actually does unto Yehovah and names himself, different than calling yourself by the name of somebody. To actually name yourself is to take their name upon you. He names himself by the name of Yisrael. And this one is the another. So we've got one says that he belongs to Yehovah. Another calls himself by Jacob. I'm Jacob. I'm Israel or whatever. And another writes on his hand unto Yehovah. He actually does it. And then he names himself by the name of Yisrael. I just think it's very, very interesting, very telling of the people who would claim to be Yehovah's people. And of course, in Revelation 14, verse 1, it says that they had their father's name written upon their foreheads when they're presented in heaven by the high priest, who's also got his father's name written on his forehead. And they brought the dwelling place to Moshe, the tent and all its furnishings, its hooks, its boards, its bars, and its columns and its sockets. And the covering of ram skins dyed red, and the covering of fine leather, and the veil of the covering. The ark of the witness with its poles, and the lid of atonement, the table, and all its utensils, and the showbread. The clean lampstand with its lamps, the lamps to be put in order, and all its utensils, and the oil for the light. And the altar of gold, and the anointing oil, and the sweet incense, and the covering for the tent door. The bronze altar, and its bronze grating, its poles, and all its utensils, the basin with its stand, the screens of the courtyard, its columns, its sockets, the covering for the courtyard gate, its cords, its pegs, and all the utensils for the service of the dwelling place, for the tent of meeting, the woven garments to do service in the set-apart place, the set-apart garments for Aharon the priest, and his son's garments to serve as priests, according to all that Yehovah had commanded Moshe. So the children of Israel did all the work. And just a thought came into my mind, and it's a bit of a silly thought, but I was imagining what it would be like to actually be there. Do you know, like the feeling that you get when you've just tidied somewhere and everything's in order and it's all put in place? Imagine the feeling of actually being there in the desert with them, and you've had these instructions from Yehovah, and you bring it all and you've set it all in place, and it's all perfect. The ark's there, all of the, the menorah, it's all been put in place, and you're ready to embark on this journey and to be obedient to Yehovah. I'm just imagining the feeling of satisfaction. It reminded me of a verse that we read before. It says, "Great shalom have those loving your Torah, and for them there is no stumbling block." This is the same. These people did all that Yehovah commanded Moshe. I can just imagine how they felt when they'd done it and they'd set it all in place and they were ready to anoint it all. It's exactly the same for us when we follow all of the commandments. Great shalom. And again, it's the type of shalom that you cannot appreciate until you shema. And Moshe looked over all the work and saw they did it as Yehovah had commanded. I think this is just, this is one of those things that you can just read in Scripture and not truly understand the significance of. But this is one of those things, as all the word of Yehovah, which is actually encoded into reality, and all events take on this pattern in one way or another. And this is certainly true for us in our lives. Moshe looked over all the work and saw they did it as Yehovah commanded. John 5:45 says, "Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you, Moshe, in whom you have set your expectation." Moshe is going to look over all of the works that we have done and see if we do them according to all that Yehovah commanded him. John 12:44-48 said, "Then Yeshua cried out and said, 'He who believes in me believes not in me, but in him who sent me. And he who sees me sees him who sent me. I have come as a light into the world so that no one who believes in me should stay in darkness. And if anyone hears my words but does not cherish them, I do not judge him, for I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world. He who rejects me and does not receive my words has one who judges him. The word that I have spoken shall judge him in the last day.'" It's exactly what he was saying when he's saying, I'm not here to judge you. I'm not going to accuse you to the Father. There's one who will accuse you to the Father, Moses, in whom you have set your expectation. So if you accept Yeshua's words, you believe in him, you do them, you shema, then you shall not stay in darkness. And he saves you. That's what he came for, to save the world. But if you reject him, you reject Moses, then Moses will judge you in the end, and it will be exactly the same. Moses will look over all that the children of Israel had done and see whether they do it exactly as commanded. John 3:17-21 says, "For Elohim did not send his son into the world to judge people, but that the world through him might be saved." John seems to make a point of this in several places. "He who believes in him is not judged, but he who does not believe is judged already, because he has not believed in the name of the only brought forth Son of Elohim." So Yeshua is going to judge us, but it's not Yeshua judging us. It's according to a standard which we've all been given, a standard which was given to us in order to save us from this judgment. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and men loved the darkness rather than the light, for their works were wicked. For everyone who is practicing evil matters hates the light, and does not come to the light, lest his work should be exposed. But the one doing the truth comes to the light, so that his works are clearly seen, that they have been wrought in Elohim. And this now makes so much more sense to me in the context of what we've been looking at, the idea of loving and hating. And you can't serve two masters. You can't love some of the Torah and act in a way that you hate some of the Torah, or love some of the Torah but love some of the things that it speaks against in the same way. Because this scripture always seemed a little bit weird to me, that the light comes into the world, and it's the ones who are doing the truth that come to the light. Everyone who's practicing evil matters hates the light. It's interesting, because I was thinking, okay, so what's this saying here? Okay, if you do it, surely everyone is doing evil matters. Everyone doesn't hate the light. No one's doing the truth already. And we can remember as well that when Yeshua came into the world, he came to, again, a Torah-keeping people. Okay? The ones who came to the light were the ones who were doing the truth. They're the ones who were shemaring. They were the ones who were loving Elohim, because they shemared his voice. All of the people who were not doing the Torah They rejected him. And just interesting to see in the scriptures that it's like that. You search the scriptures because you think you possess everlasting life in them. And these are the ones that bear witness of me. Okay, again, it's given to a Torah-keeping people. You search the scripture, you recognize the scriptures, and you think you've got life in it because what? You're doing some of the Torah, or you make a pretense of it. You say with your mouth that you're a Torah keeper, but you do not desire to come to me in order to possess life. You don't desire to shema, you don't desire to submit. I do not receive esteem from men, but I know you that you do not have the love of Elohim in you. Interesting, isn't it? That it makes sense in the context that we've looked at. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you would receive. How are you able to believe when you are receiving esteem from one another, and the esteem that is from the only Elohim you do not seek? Again, this is to a Torah-keeping people. And then he says, do not think I shall accuse you to the Father. There's one who accuses you, Moshe, in whom you have set your expectation. And you've got all the Torah keepers all the world round, and they all think that they're great with the Father. Okay? But they're not seeking esteem from Elohim because they don't act in a way that seeks esteem from him. They seek esteem from one another. They do the right things in one another's sight. And they think that just because they are professing to do the Torah, they've come back to the Torah, they're not like the church, we can reject the church. They think they're okay. Not the way that Yeshua describes it. And 2 Corinthians 5:10 says, for we all have to appear before the judgment seat of Messiah. This is all the people who are saved. This is all the Torah keepers. We all have to appear before the judgment seat of Messiah in order for each one to receive according to what he has done in the body, whether good or evil. Sobering thought. And then the end of that, it says, and Moshe blessed them. So Moshe looks over all that we do, and then Moses blesses us. If we walk in accordance to Torah, Deuteronomy 28 says, if you diligently shema the voice of Yehovah your Elohim, to cherish to do all his commands which I command you today, that Yehovah your Elohim shall set you high above the nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice of Yehovah your Elohim. Moshe looked over all the work, made sure that they did it, made sure that they obeyed, that they cherished the commandments of Yehovah, and then Moshe blessed them. It's just another way that this repeats throughout the word. And Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, on the first day of the first Chodesh, you are to raise up a dwelling place of the tent of meeting, and shall put in it the ark of the witness, and screen the ark with the veil. And you shall bring in the table and arrange what belongs on it, and bring in the lampstand and light its lamps. And you shall see the altar of gold for the incense before the ark of the witness, and put up the covering of the door to the dwelling place. And I think it's interesting that we're actually off now on the Torah portion cycle. Okay, we're not following the normal Torah portion cycle. However, this is the week that we had the first day of the first Chodesh in this very week. It's interesting to me. You shall set the altar of the burnt offering before the door of the dwelling place of the tent of meeting. So we can read over that and not really understand what it's saying, but it's saying, okay, at the beginning of the year, so this is the beginning of the second year, just before they were about to keep the Passover. And what does Yehovah bring about so that they can keep the Passover? He brings about the tabernacle where the Passover lamb is to be killed. And she'll set the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and she'll put water therein. And you shall set up the courtyard all around, and shall place the covering of the courtyard gate. And shall take the anointing oil and anoint the dwelling place and all that is in it, and shall set it and all its utensils apart, and it shall be set apart. And you shall anoint the altar of the burnt offering and all its utensils, and set the altar apart, and the altar shall be most set apart. And you shall anoint the basin and its stand, and set it apart. And you shall bring Aharon and his sons to the door of the tent of meeting, and wash them with water. And you shall put the set apart garments on Aharon, and anoint him, and set him apart to serve as priest to me. And you shall bring his sons, and put long shirts on them. and shall anoint them as you anointed their father, and they shall serve as priests to me, and their anointing shall be for them an everlasting priesthood throughout their generations. And Moshe did according to all that Yehovah commanded him. So he did. And it came to be in the first Chodesh of the second year, on the first day of the Chodesh, that the dwelling place was raised up. And Moshe raised up the dwelling place and placed its sockets and set up its boards and put in its bars and raised up its columns and spread the tent over the dwelling place and put the covering of the tent on top of it as Yehovah had commanded Moshe. And he took the witness and put it into the ark, and he put the poles through the rings of the ark and put the lid of atonement on top of the ark and brought the ark into the dwelling place and placed the veil of the covering to screen off the ark of the witness as Yehovah commanded Moshe. And he put the table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the tent of the dwelling place outside the veil, and set the bread in order upon it before Yehovah, as Yehovah had commanded Moshe. And he put the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the dwelling place, and lit the lamps before Yehovah, as Yehovah had commanded Moshe. And he put the gold altar in the tent of meeting in front of the veil, and burned sweet incense on it, as Yehovah had commanded Moshe. And he set up the covering to the door of the dwelling place. And he put the altar of burnt offering before the door of the dwelling place of the tent of meeting, and offered upon it the burnt offering and the grain offering, as Yehovah had commanded Moshe. And he put the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water therein for washing. And Moshe and Aharon and his sons washed their hands and their feet with water from it. As they went into the tent of meeting and as they came near the altar, they would wash as Yehovah had commanded Moshe. And he raised up all the courtyard all around the dwelling place and the altar, and placed the covering of the courtyard gate, and Moshe completed the work. And the cloud covering the tent of meeting and the esteem of Yehovah, the glory of Yehovah, filled the dwelling place. And Moshe was not able to come into the tent of meeting because the cloud dwelt on it, and the esteem of Yehovah filled the dwelling place. It's amazing, isn't it, that these people in the wilderness saw all of this that was happening. They saw the power of Elohim, that he brought them out of Egypt. They saw all of this. They saw this huge tabernacle constructed. They'd seen their leader Moshe was unable to go into this tabernacle because of the power of Elohim. And yet they didn't shema. They didn't believe the words. You think, I don't know, it's just incredible. People see Yehovah in their lives and they think that that is, they think that's enough. They think that is, I don't know, like a guarantee that they're okay, that they're there with Yehovah. Oh yeah, I've turned to Yehovah, I do the Torah. I see him at work in my life all of the time. Missing the fact that the Israelites saw him so much more at work in all of their lives, and yet they didn't make it. It's insane to me. When the cloud was taken up from above the dwelling place, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not set out till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of Yehovah was on the dwelling place by day, and fire was on it by night, before the eyes of all the house of Israel and in all their journeys. We're given a little bit of extra information about that. In Numbers 9, it says, even when the cloud lingered many days above the tabernacle, the children of Israel guarded the charge of Yehovah and did not depart. And so it was when the cloud was above the tabernacle for a few days, according to the command of Yehovah, they camped, and according to the command of Yehovah, they would depart. And so it was when the cloud dwelt only from evening until morning. When the cloud was taken up in the morning, they departed, whether by day or by night. Whenever the cloud was taken up, they departed. We've seen this before when we went through Numbers. But all of the stuff that was required to set up the tabernacle, they set it up. They moved out with all of the carts and everything that it would have involved for all of the children of Israel to move. They set it up somewhere else. And then in the morning, it got off again and it departed across the desert. And they just instantly did it. Whether 2 days or a chodesh or a year that the cloud lingered above the tabernacle to dwell upon it, the children of Israel camped and did not depart. But when it was taken up, they departed. At the command of Yehovah they camped, and at the command of Yehovah they departed. They guarded the charge of Yehovah at the command of Yehovah by the hand of Moshe. And it reminds me of this scripture, okay? I don't know, just events in my life and just thinking about things, about waiting for things to happen and things like that. This is the thing, this is the sentiment which kind of, I don't know, is being enforced by this, by these things that come up in your life. Okay, it's like, oh no, we've got to move out again. Just this seems so ridiculous. Okay, but all of it is designed to instill this. All of it is designed to instill a trust in Yehovah. So if you, I don't know, however that applies to you, this is the antidote to that. Okay, shall we pray? Father, I thank you again that you've taken out of our number those who do not cherish you, do not cherish your word. I thank you that you care about us enough to have done that. I pray for those people who have departed from you and have strayed from your Torah. I pray that they will come to repentance. I pray, Father, that you would lead them to the love of you. Please help us, Father, to be holy in your sight. Help us to run the race and help us to win and be there with you in glory when you come. Thank you for all that you do, Father. Amen.